going to bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's going to be biblical.
Who's doing it?
Oh, I thought you were. Hi, everyone. We're here. Welcome to Patriots Across the Pond and Frens, episode 47. We are supposed to have Derek Johnson on today, and we don't know. He's MIA. We're hoping everything is okay. We reached out a few times. We'll see what happens. We may have to reschedule if he doesn't show up, but we're very happy to be here with you this lovely Monday morning from Long Island and Monday afternoon from the UK. How you doing, Stu?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's gone a little bit cold again here, really, but the sun is shining out there. But I've got my distillers on, so it's nice and warm in here. So,
It warms everything up when you put them on?
Yeah, I've got two distillers, blows hot air out the top. It's much.
Wow.
They're only 750 watts, and my heating is 18 kilowatts. So my heating is like having 6 kettles on when that's on, which is why it's about fucking £10 an hour for the first hour anyway.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I much prefer the warmer weather.
Yeah. Now, in the warm weather, do you have to put on the AC, the air conditioning?
We don't have air conditioning in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I had this uncle who was always profusely hot. He hated being hot. And he said when he wrote his memoirs, someday he was going to have a chapter in it that said, "Chemicals I've grown to love. Number 1, Freon," because he couldn't live without air conditioning.
I mean, it would be lovely if we don't really get enough hot days here.
Okay.
But when I'm sitting here podcasting in the summer, obviously you haven't had that experience yet. That is why the first video.
Oh, I have. With doing everything with Mel and my other podcast.
Oh, yeah, well, the first video I sent into Carol for Dear Mr. President, she sent it back saying, "Can you put a shirt on?" Because I'm sitting here because I'm so hot. I'm sitting here sometimes with a headband on.
Oh my God, that really. Yeah, you know what it is? We here on Long Island and New York, we get a lot of humidity. So even if the temperature is not terribly hot, you get that wet, humid, and yeah, I don't think I could live without air conditioning. Isn't that terrible? I mean, here, and Florida is even worse because it's so humid.
Yeah.
And we have central air. Like a lot of people have units, but central air. So you just adjust it and it's beautiful. The temperature is the same throughout the house.
Look, don't get me wrong. I have sat here Googling and looking at air conditioning units and these sorts of things. And you can have them like standing things, can't you? But it's like when I used to drive a taxi, I never used to have the air conditioning on in the car, right? Because as soon as you get out to help someone, you're sweating up. And as soon as you get back in the car, you're cold again.
Yeah.
So I just had the windows open. So I'm good at acclimatizing, really. But look, if I had the money, I'd love to have the heating on all winter and the air conditioning on all summer. But yeah, we don't get enough of those really, really hot days over here.
That's good. I mean, that's good.
Well, it's not, because I absolutely thrive in the hot weather. We had one day here, it wasn't last year, it was about 2 years ago, and it went up to about 40 degrees. What is that in your language?
40?
104 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty hot.
And I was sitting here and it was just running down me. So
I
I
would
went out
die.
for a run. I went out for a run to cool down. And a few people messaging me, were you out running earlier? Yeah, I went out for a run to cool down.
Oh, well, thank you, Badger Brock. Oh my God. He says, your hair looks good. Have you been to the hairdresser? No, but I'm going to tell you guys a little secret. My daughter, actually, I should have known this, but she actually told me, we started using apple cider vinegar on our hair. And I did it last week. And I did it. First of all, it's so easy to style after using it. And second of all, I feel like it's more silky. I mean, think about it. That made me think this morning. This is what I was thinking about when I was drying my hair. I was thinking, holy crap. Let's think of all the fucking chemicals we put on our head. And then I started thinking of little kids, like using shampoo on their head. So it's apple cider vinegar. Although I did, like on the ends, I did put a little conditioner. So it wasn't on my scalp. But that's
Lisa, it looks like you've just stepped out of the salon.
Right? I know. So, well, anyway, thank you. That was a really nice comment. So we were going to talk today. I mean, one of the reasons we invited Derek back on was because we wanted to talk a little bit about the Awakening Summit, right, which is April 25th and 26th here on Long Island in Lynbrook. And we're very curious to a lot of these folks that are coming in. We wanted to get their input, like what makes New York a place that you want to come to for, sharing your information and, interacting with the folks here and the Patriots. So that was part of, and then of course we were going to hopefully do like a little intel, current events kind of a thing with him. But well, if you're watching, Derek, we hope everything's okay. So I don't know what's going on. How was your weekend? Anything that hit you? We were talking before about this movie and how we have hated certain actors and celebrities through the years because of their position on liberal issues and the ridiculousness of their words and, points of view. And then we were saying, well, if everything was done, if we go on the assumption that everything was done by, let's say, the first Q drop in 2017, then this movie would have started, before then or at that time with a lot of these people like Whoopi Goldberg and Robert De Niro and, George Clooney doing these, in my opinion, horrifically liberal things. And maybe it's just a good movie requires good actors.
It does. Yeah, I just want to. Simone commented here. Are you kidding, Stu? Last year was a swelter. I had to sleep in the garden on a few occasions. No, like I say, I love the hot weather, and I mean when it's hot like that. The worst thing about hot weather is going to sleep, and I'd love to have a nice air conditioning unit in my boudoir of an evening while I sleep. But I just sleep on top of the bed, And if
Do you use fans?
Pardon?
Do you use fans?
No, I hate fans. I want it nice and quiet when I go to sleep.
I kind of like it. They're a little bit like white noise, which is...
No, I can't be doing any of that.
Okay.
No, I know lots of people like a fan above the bed, don't they, and all those sorts of things. But no, I'm all right. If I'm sweating while I'm laying in bed and all that, I just, instead of going, I'm sweating, right, I think, aren't I nice and warm? What would it be like now to be swimming in the Arctic? And then I just,
You feel better. Yeah.
It's just things like that don't bother me.
That's good.
If I'm out on a cold bike ride as well, I think I'd much rather be warm now. But I think, well, I'm only out an hour or something. I'll be all right when I get home.
That's really good. I mean, here, if I had to pick my perfect temperature, I would say like in Fahrenheit, in like the 60s.
Oh, I don't know what it is. Let me have a look at my chart.
It's just like delightful.
It's 15 degrees. No, my perfect temperature probably in the day is about 25 degrees.
Okay.
And at night, 17.
Oh.
That's fine. Yeah. I could live like that, which is why when I looked at the weather in Florida, it is that. And I thought, I could handle myself a little bit of that.
Yeah, like in the summers, it gets very humid in Florida, maybe up into the 90s Fahrenheit. But the winters there, like winters meaning like anytime from like November, December to like February are beautiful. Beautiful. That's why people from New York and the North go to Florida in the winter. They call them snowbirds. And it's just incredible. You miss all the, the extra freezing, but everything's air conditioned in Florida. So, I mean, if you're outside and you're in the sun, obviously you want the heat, right? You want to enjoy it, but it's not like you can't escape it.
Yeah.
Pat Blair, summer in Florida is horrible. Yeah. So what's happening? This was our first, this weekend. We just kind of took a break from everything from the week last week, which was so horrible with George's mom dying. And so this weekend we just had fun. Me and Kelsey, we went out, we, shopped. So now I got to get back and, get my head on a little straight with the geopolitical world. Anything?
Yeah, well, it's just because this is Patriots Across the Pond. This is the channel where we discuss the weather. So,
oh, excuse me, Derek's calling. Hang on, Kathy.
No, Derek's here. Derek's here.
Hey,
Hi, Derek.
there was no link in my calendar, so.
Oh, that's all right, sir. We just cracked on, and we hoped you turn up. So that's amazing. How are you?
Hi.
Yeah, I'm never late for anything. I was looking for a link, and I don't have a link in my calendar. So anyway, that's I operate on calendar, and anyway.
Yeah, well, it's good. I'm glad you're here.
Well, we're glad you're here. Yeah.
Yeah. So how you been? There is an awful lot going on in the world.
Well, it is to people that don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, to people that don't know what's going on, don't think anything's going on, really, do they? There's still a lot of people, and even in the Truth-It movement, you still got a lot of these people that nothing's happening crowd, the panic hands and the black pillars. It's it's pathetic.
Well, I mean, it's a shakedown of where we are in the world, and who has tenacity, who has really everything. But it just goes back to our foundation. If you look at the numbers of the people who were in the military in the U.S. during the Revolutionary War, and that, they called the military back then too militia. So anybody, who took arms, it could have been a farmer or blacksmith or anybody who took an arm. If you look at the numbers, it's kind of crazy. It's 1.7 to 1.8% each year of the 8-year war. That's not a lot of people. So in reality, I think the numbers are about the same when it comes to who knows what exactly is going on, word for word, who could sit around in a small group or somewhere and say, hey, I can't repeat it like this guy can, but there's only a handful of people in that category. But, they knew this. The generals, the admirals, I know a lot of the key people up here. They knew this. They've been knowing this. They knew Americans didn't know. They also knew Americans would be ornery, ungrateful, unappreciative, yelling, kicking, cussing, fussing, demanding. But like I said in my podcast last night, if you're in a demand position, that means you're not in a command position. So when I can show you that there's a command going on of a military government, then guess what that means? Your demand actually don't mean a thing in another manner, because we came to a crossroads of civilization for a reason. We had to have this military government because they didn't know what's going on. And I just broke down by law, military law, last night, all the key pieces where you find it in old military law, which is still active, that the Constitution supports the military government. It's not the other way around. It's not the military government supports the Constitution. And see, in law is a written discipline. So it's all in writing, and that's what matters. And when it's not abolished, when it's not terminated, guess what it means? It's still active. It's still effective. A president can use it. And so in the law, it specifically reads that, especially for Americans, if you're outside of America, it don't apply to you. But for Americans more specifically, it straight up tells people that your First Amendment and all of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, it's not canceled and terminated forever. But for this military government, it's the military law supersedes the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So if you're out there barking, they don't care. We don't care. I don't care. From the standpoint of, if you're not seeking to comprehend what's going on lawfully, then it's just noise, right? It matters because the goal is people, but the noise don't matter. That's what the number one thing, anyone who's ever been to the military, is probably some of your audience says, that's what basic training does. You hear people in America say, I didn't join the military because I couldn't handle all that yelling and screaming. They yell and scream at you to create an environment of chaos where you can work in chaos. If you can work in chaos, you can work in anything. So it's not about the yelling and screaming as a power trip. Some may be doing it for that reason, but for the overall, the bigger picture is they create an environment of chaos. And if you can work steadily in chaos and block out the noise, you can work in anything. And that's why guys like me are, you can yell at me, you can cuss, you can be mad, you can send me hate mail and all this other stuff. And I'm just over here going, well, you proved my point.
Yeah.
I think we're all doing that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never thought of it like that. Of course, I've never served in the military, but you see movies, right? And you see that. And I never thought of it in terms of chaos. Like, that's really a great point. Hey, you just mentioned that last night, on a podcast, you want to touch on some of those points that you were chatting about?
Oh, well, I can. I didn't want to, if you, I didn't know if you had specific questions, but I can do that. Yeah.
We do.
There was someone just put in obviously we know this military operation is going on and the UK is somewhat behind what is playing out, whether Starmer's controlled and stuff. Someone just put in the chat, question for Derek. Does Derek know anything about the UK being sorted out and how it's all unfolding?
Well, what people have to always remember always on the preface before any question, every question should always have the preface being that, look, there's two scenarios being played out at the same time. One, the target audience sees a certain piece. If they don't know the laws and the orders, then they got to see the narrative that's being played in the media and the run-of-the-mill mouth, right? The other portion is the military government, the military law. Now, during the 2017, 2018, it was 2017 to 2019. The capitulations kind of stopped in 2020 because that's what defined who was going to be a part of this operation. All those capitulations were every leader signing up at some capacity, meaning the capacity, they were full capacity, but meaning where they're going to play their part will be determined by the strategy and blueprint. So the UK, President Trump has been shown way back with, prime ministers and all different kinds of people. He has been shown, when he was with the Queen, he walked in front of the Queen. Those things were showing that the crown is being dismantled and no one's going to be left behind in this. Now, when he says America first, that don't mean America first and the hell with everybody else. That just means America first. And then in the Indo-Pacific Agreement and a few other kind of agreements, it's very specifically written that every nation will be independent on their own However, no one's going to leave anybody behind during this moment. But it does show that people, wherever you are, you're going to have to get in touch with what's going on in your nation, especially if you love where you're from. If you love your culture, and you should love where you're from and your culture, and you should want to stay and fight there, right? And I don't mean a fight. It's not going to be a fight in a bad way, but just a spiritual fight, but also get in touch with what's going on with your leaders. Now, it's not live time. So like Americans right now are reacting to Congress. Congress is under a partial continuity government, which means everything they're doing is being ran by a military government. The only way you're going to know that is to know the terms, the definitions, and the laws and orders of that. And that's where a lot of Americans are struggling, is they don't want to see, and some don't know to seek it, but the ones that have seen me before, they're not reading and studying what is a military government, what's a shadow government, what's a puppet government. Now they're using a shadow government and a puppet government kind of like a hybrid, where Joe was not real. Joe had no authority by law, and the law reads this, but it was more of a shadow government by definition, but a puppet government, meaning the military is using pieces to look real, but it's not. And the law shows this. So UK is, and no one's being left behind. Not even the smallest nation out there is being left behind. It's just who's a key player and who's a key piece. Now, UK is a key piece because of the crown, but that's going to tie into Canada as well. So all these pieces are being played out. If Canada, what's being portrayed to the normal world out there, they think Canada is up in arms with the U.S. If that were the case, we wouldn't have Canadian aircraft all day long all over the United States of America at regional and little bitty airports. I'm talking about like that don't even have hardly like a grass hut for a terminal, right? We're talking about in rural areas, which means they're in operations with us. All right. So that wouldn't be happening if Canada was an outright, enemy of ours or not a friendly. We don't have Chinese aircraft over here. All right. So that would show you right there. We don't have North Korean aircraft over here. So that shows you right there that Canada is in direct, plus President Trump's USMCA agreement. So Canada, no matter what they portray, if you know the laws and orders, you see otherwise. So UK and all these others are going to be fine. The whole thing's in operation. But getting into military government, I was trying to see if I had the book here, but if people, I don't think I have it right here with me. I think it's on my mantle in there, but I could run and get it real quick. I'll show you a book that everybody could buy that's relatively cheap. I didn't write it. The most recent edition, I think, is 1914, but let me get it real quick.
No problem.
This will be very great for people to get a hold of. But I mean, you could get it on PDF, but if you'll just look up this specific one, I don't know if they glare, but
we can see it: military government and martial law. And the author is William
Burkheimer.
William E. Burkheimer. Yeah.
This is what every military personnel has. Every general and admiral will have this on their shelf. And it's not a hard read. I mean, it's literally like little, it's not even it's what they did is basically this book would not have been in publication like this when it was a book. This is a 1914 edition. So this is somebody who modified it to fit on modern pages. So William Burkheimer, the backlog of this is William Burkheimer was, I think he made it up to a captain in the military, but he was what they call a Shermanite. He was up under General Sherman. He loved General Sherman. And General Sherman took on a debate with a full bird colonel. So a full bird colonel went up against a general. And it was a good debate. And this is what people lack as well, because so many people now are so up in arms and just want to argue about things and want to fuss and fight versus having a logical, philosophical, debate, if you want to call it that, or just a discussion. So these two went up against each other. And there's an actual article out there that you can read about it, the debate. And this guy here, he had to give the nod to the colonel. The colonel with the general, philosophically. All right. And that's what produced a lot of these books, was off of the Colonel William Winthrop. And he was known as the Blackstone of military law. And so that's why every military officer out there, they need to be well versed in this. And I know that's what they're working on. I mean, they're going to clean out they're doing that. They're cleaning out the academies. They're taking out all the these officer programs from Harvard and all these other colleges where all these people were going woke. And they're going to get them back on things that matter again. As President Trump said, keep it simple, right? So it's got to go back to the simple principles of the military, and the military being military. And we should never have to use the military unless we need the military, versus all these other wars that were started for no good reason whatsoever. So everybody is truly watching a world cleanout. It's like a true turning point. But books like this, and then you can look up a thing called Military Law and Precedents. It is in a book form now, kind of like this, but called Military Law and Precedents. And it outlines in all these different places, like this right here on page, if you flip to page 23, or if you go, they have it on PDF, like if you prefer PDF, but it'll tell you right here, like, while the formal declaration of war can only be made by Congress, it becomes necessary sometimes to prosecute hostilities without such declaration. And it specifically says the president then must act, for the time being at least, independently of Congress. So see, this is military law. None of this is abolished. It's still in effect. And so if it's telling you that the president can most certainly act without Congress, and then it tells you specifically that the Constitution supports military government, not the military government supports Constitution, and that tells you military government supersedes the Constitution. And guess what it says in the Law of War Manual? That the law of war supersedes the law of the land, which is the Constitution. So see, this is why so many people look bad, and a lot of influencers look lost. You know, some of them look bad, but a lot of them are just lost because they have no idea what's in military law, and that it supersedes everything else when we're in a declared war of this kind. And so what I was showing people just a while ago, I just put a post up right before I got on here. So there's an article now on people.com, which is People Read That magazine, right? People. And they got a picture of George Bush up, and it's saying that it's saying George Bush comments on being a wartime, playing golf during a wartime. You know, so they always beating up President Trump for playing golf. Well, this is where I teach people principles. Let's go with the principle that they're showing you. It's not about George Bush anymore. It's about wartime. It's not about golf. It's not about Bush. It's about wartime. So all these people out there are calling Iran a war. Well, it's not declared. Or is it? So see, I've been showing people that there's a declaration. A resolution is another form of a declaration. Now, I believe, like any other constitutional person, the War Powers Resolution Act is unconstitutional. If the three branches, which they were created co-equal to each other, that means that they're all equal to each other. If one gets out of balance, the other two are supposed to balance it out, not dominate it. So what have we seen in America? The legislative branch and the judicial branch, most congressmen, 36% of representatives and 50% of senators are lawyers. What have they done? They've written the law on their own without the will of the people. They presented the bills without the will of the people. What does Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, the movie, talk about? Lawyers present bills without people. And I'm the only one who talks about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and President Trump just reposted Mr. Smith Goes to Washington recently. He's been giving me a lot of validations lately, if people will see it. Well, so the legislative branch are lawyers. The judicial branch are all lawyers. And they've been telling what the executive branch is supposed to do and how he's supposed to do it. And He can't even do his job because they're over here saying, you got to do this, you got to do this, you can't do this, you can't do it. He most certainly can. The military law shows this. So that's where we had to have a military government. The law war manual talks about undesirability. So all the people out there whining and complaining and griping and all fatigued, the law war manual tells you it's going to be undesirable. All of the military, it's not fun. It's not like we want to do it, but we had to do it, right? We had to take control. So all of the executive branch, the military government outlines that the president can declare war when hostilities are imminent. Well, what did President Trump tell everybody in 2020? He said, we've been invaded. We're fighting an invisible enemy. We've been invaded. Our gravest threats are not abroad, they're within, right? So he made those proclamations in 2020. So that's what cancels out January the 6th as an insurrection, because in law, in military law, in martial law proper, as they call it, as you'll find in the law war manual, in martial law, that's the very key thing. Martial law proper is what it's called, not just martial law, but martial law proper. That's the one that supersedes the Constitution. And it specifically says the president can authorize this. He can declare this in a time of what? Invasion and insurrection. So what happened is when people started yelling insurrection on January 6th and after, they didn't realize the proclamations had already been made way back in 2020. So if I beat you first, that means I have the goods first. President Trump said that in March. Then in October, he said, we have it all. We've caught them all, right? So all of that was before January the 6th, before Yemen, before Iran. And so what I do last night, and I've been doing it, is calling people hypocrites. If you're yelling no war with Iran, why weren't you yelling no war with Yemen? An airstrike's an airstrike. U.S. military in any other nation outside the U.S. is still U.S. military. So the same bombers that are bombing Iran were bombing Yemen in March and May last year. Nobody was yelling no war with Yemen. Nobody was yelling no war with Venezuela, right? No one's yelling that. But guess when they weren't yelling it? That's the oldest one. That war was declared April the 1st, 2020 by Southern Command military. It's on the website. All our joint partners. That's when the Caribbean counter-narcotics operation was launched, was April the 1st, 2020. No April Fools, but it was launched April the 1st, 2020. Why weren't the same quote-unquote Republicans and never Trumpers, that term's back in play now. We got the never Trumpers back, right? Yeah. They're fatigued. They ain't seen anything. There's no justice. Now their title's back, the never Trumper. They jumped on the bandwagon, but now we see in their colors. Where were they in 2020 going, oh, no, I know what this means. This is a declaration against. They weren't doing that then. So see, it shows people have no idea what's going on. And if they knew what it was all about, every bit of those actions, Venezuela, Yemen, Iran, executive order Obama, executive order Jimmy Carter. So all of President Trump's airstrike operations are from quote-unquote diplomacy from the past, which means guess who did not capitulate? Iran didn't capitulate. Venezuela didn't capitulate. Yemen didn't capitulate. So guess what happens? FO, right? Those are the ones. That's all you can say. You didn't capitulate. And what that means for humanity, though, not just the U.S., what that means for humanity is they didn't care enough about you to capitulate to say, hey, we've been caught. We give up. We want to participate with the world. That's what they're telling people. So when they didn't do that, then the world has to find out too. So that's what all taking place. But it's all lawful. But where most Americans are struggling is the fact that they don't even know military law either. They don't have a clue that military law is separate from federal law. We have our own law. We have our own philosophies. We have our own manuals, strategies, tactics, etc. And the law, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 14 of the very Constitution they all claim to know or claim to support, that very clause, legislative branch, Article 1 is legislative. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 14 says specifically that the Congress is to make regulations of the Army and the Navy. Well, in 1875, what did they do? The Congress did what? They gave that authority and command to the president. And that law is still in effect. So the president makes the regulations of the Army and the Navy. And then he's always had the treaties. That's by the constitutional. He's always had treaties. So if the three branches were doing everything they're supposed to be doing by their roles and responsibilities, then the president's role is national security. Our founders specifically outlined that the president is the guardian of national security. National security is Title 50. Chapter 33 is the Unconstitutional War Powers Act. But just for the sake of, since it's in play, President Trump says, well, it's unconstitutional, but I'll take it and I'll use it against you all. And that's what we're doing, is taking their playbook and playing it back on them. They can't yell unconstitutional themselves. And if they do, they look even dumber because you passed it. You authorized it. So see, if people will learn the verbiage, the terms, the definitions, and then learn the chess pieces of it. If Congress says that something's unconstitutional, but they've been in Congress longer than President Trump has been a president, all you got to do is say, oh, well, you passed it. You authorized this. You kept it in law. So see, if people will learn that aspect, that's where the fun begins. And then you'll see the bigger board and go, wait, this is all a big strategy to take down the hypocrisy and to wipe out all the people who are using their office for money, monetary gain. They're all millionaires. None of them have a background in business, most of them. But even the ones that do, they use their business intellect and their office position together. Like Mitt Romney, he's a great example. Someone who's an opportunist. They're chameleons. Most of them, they say what they need to say to get elected. And that's where the people have to sharpen their skills. So you got to know the language. It's very specific.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for us that are really paying attention here in the UK to the military operation and Q and stuff, there's no way Keir Starmer has not been capitulated. He's been controlled to do what he's doing. It's almost like we're going through the Biden years over here. And, to wake these people up before the hammer goes down. But, there's a lot going on. And I was going to ask you about that because there's a lot of division being created now in MAGA, isn't there? You've got all these big influencers out, Candace and Tucker, Alex Jones, Marjorie Taylor Greene sort of flip-flopping. But what do you think that confusion is for, to ultimately bring everyone together in this awakening to, do more research?
In one way, there's two parts that I would specify on that. For the Patriots out there that keep saying they're a part of it, you got to know how they're a part of it. You got to know what President Trump is showing you. He's in command, no one else. And you'll read that also in the military law and precedents. You'll read that specifically. That who's in command and who has the dominant power. Well, that's President Trump. He's the face of it. Now, the generals and admirals and military have the ultimate strategy and playbook. But President Trump signed on for that. He put his face on it, and he's smart too. I'm not knocking him by all means. He's a brilliant man. But people need to know he's the face. He signed on for this, to be that. I'll take the ridicule, the mockery, everything. Right. He knew the beginning long before. So that's why I show people the 45-47. He knew the whole thing before he rolled down that escalator. He knew what everything was going to look like all the way to January the 20th, 2029 and beyond. So that's already a given. So, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, whether you specifically individually listening out there, whether you knew them beforehand, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that whenever they launched their platform, Candace Owens already had a platform by like 2015, but she didn't really blow up until I think 2019, somewhere in there, like as far as like massive audience. So it still doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because whenever they launch shows that they were every one of these people you just mentioned, and there's so many more we can mention, they were all prior to President Trump being president. So you use them on the chessboard for one reason. One, they already had an audience. So they already had a captured syndicated audience. So you use that as a chessboard, especially depending on what they talk about. Well, all those specifically talk about politics, right? Alex Jones is probably the most colorful out of that group. Candace makes a hard push for second place, and then Tucker and a few others. But Alex Jones is probably the most, the one that everybody called the conspiracy guy and a this and a that. And he pushed all these hard narratives, yada, yada, yada. But anybody can look at Alex Jones and think that dude's the same dude. That's what baffles me with people out there is I'm like, you're straight up you're just telling a military veteran who does I do have all my credentials. We call it a badge, but I have all my credentials to the Department of War. I'm still fully, if you want to call it licensed, that's not the right term, but it's just a badge, right? So I'm fully checked out there. That's an insult to anybody in the military. I don't like using myself as an insult to me because it don't bother me, but it's an insult to the military to sit here and argue with straight up tactics and strategies that we've used for years, right? Alex Jones, not a good dude. All right, I'm going ahead and tell you right now. You got to use me as an example. All right, if anyone was doing anything against the military, the average audience out there that says, well, how can Derek Johnson talk about this if it's a military operation? How can Derek Johnson talk about it if it's strategies? And I'm like, people, everything I talk about is already made public. It's not covert or clandestine anymore. But you need a guy like me to say that was a covert or a clandestine operation before you knew about it. And here's where it is in military law. Because none of it is federal, anything, except for the executive order portion. That's the only thing federal about it. So you need a military personnel. So when people say that out there, they don't realize what they're alluding to. And I have no beef with anybody like Alex and all these people. But if you're going to do this, then you have to paint this picture. If the average audience out there thinks what I'm doing would be, why would he do that? Well, why would he say that? If this is President Trump's honor and the military's honor, because we've been put here. That is why I have credentials. That is why I'm in this spot. It's a cyber warfare as well. That's the heaviest part of it. Is it spiritual information, but it goes through cyber because it's all technology based now. Everybody has a phone in their hand about 8 hours a day on average. On what? An app, either Facebook, Instagram, X, or all of them at different times, right? So it's cyber warfare. Then it's information warfare with the spiritual dome always around, depending on what you believe out there. So if anybody, though, was going to get a door knock for saying too much, it'd be me, because I'm the one that outlines the laws, the orders, the strategies, the tactics. Alex Jones never showed you laws. He never showed you orders. He never showed you strategies, tactics, because he don't know any of that because he's not military, right? So if anybody was going to have the FBI at their door or the CIA or any of them at the Department of War, it'd be me saying, hey, Derek, come on. Yeah, take it back just a little bit, right? You're always ahead of everything because special operations right here, right? You can't buy these hats, ladies and gentlemen. You can't buy these bags, by the way. These are you have to kind of be recruited if you're not active duty. All right, just go ahead and tell you right now, you can't buy this stuff online. So, if anyone's going to get a knock on the door, it'd be me. Because I have the full blueprint outline. Now, I'm not knocking you two and anybody else for doing your part, but if I just may say, anyone who reads that blueprint, they wouldn't need anything else because that is the 45-47 blueprint. Now, where everybody does have the part is, okay, what's on the aftermath? Now, the military government's going to take care of what it's taking care of right now. The real fight begins when the real constitutional government gets back into play, when the partial continuity government is relieved, and you'll see that by the cancellation or the revoking of law. You'll see that. You're going to see that. All right. So when all of President Trump terminates all these things from years past and we work it out, fix it, do all that, when we get back to a full constitutional bylaw government, that's when the real fight begins. That's when people have to learn to prevent what just took place, right? Because you're in the demand position, not the command, which means we in the command are doing what? We're the operators, not you. All right. Your operation starts whenever we're back to a full continuity, revocation, meaning all that's gone, mission accomplished, mission complete. Your mission starts then as the people going, okay, how do we prevent? Well, that means skill sets to hear deception, Alex Jones, Candace Owens. You don't need drama like that. You don't need anyone out there who's just ruffling your feathers, drama, surface level talk, and all that stuff. If you want to have a conversation about gay marriage or Buddhist or Christianity, do that in your family, your friend base, your small groups, and things of that nature. That's where the real preservation of America or your nation starts. It's not on social media just always saying, this, that, and other. Oh, the president should do this. The president should. No, you don't need that in your life. They don't have a clue what's going on. You need the laws and the orders of your land that are good. And when you read those, you'll find the ones that you don't like, and that's okay. And if there's a law out there that majority of the people go, what in the world is this? And why is it here? And how did it get passed? That's where you come in and say, we don't like this. We want this abolished. And all of you in one accord have to be together and go to your lawmakers and say, we want this out of law. What's it in law for? Abraham Lincoln taught you this. He said, a bad law should be double strictly enforced where the people can see it, where they can express their dissent. All right. Well, my thing is, I'll one up old Abe. I can one up Abe, rest in peace, Abe, but I can one up him and say, why did it get in law? How did it get in law? Why didn't the people know that it was being presented as a bill to be passed for a law? So see, that's where everybody has to strengthen that. So there's a two-part play is how are they being used, right? So most of it, like I said last night, this is the first time in world history that when every one of you wake up, everyone, your first thought is what? What did President Trump say today? Right? That's what everybody does all over the world, even in third world countries, which shows you that they are going to use the emergency alert somehow or some form of communication like that. Because what did they show everybody? They showed the little bitty kids in some little tiny third world country in the continent of Africa doing the Trump dance. Everybody wakes up in the world going, what did President Trump say today? What is President Trump doing? Everybody in the world, right? So it means what? Engagement. So sometimes bad engagement or the yelling, kicking, cussing, we don't care about that part. See, that we can handle that part because this is an operation. Like we were talking about a while ago, the yelling and the chaos, right? But engagement means we have you engaged. Don't matter how we have you engaged. We have you locked in, which means you'll be the recipient of what you're going to be the recipient of. So sometimes you got to use the chess pieces where we are today, 2026, the world we live in is technology. So you use these platforms because they already have engagement. So you lock them in. Now, they've already shown people if they were willing to look at Alex Jones, he's a great example. His camera guy. So like me, I'm a country music artist first. I had hits in country music before all this, and I got a chance to serve my nation again externally, and I took it. But I'm still a country music artist. So, I already had these hits. So, I just lost where I was going with that train of thought. But anyway, it was something to do with Alex Jones. But, the videos. So I have a video team. I forget about them now. I got my buddy Eddie. Shout out my buddy Eddie. I almost forget about my video crew. I just texted him the other day going, I'm sorry. Let's get some videos lined up for music videos. Well, when they do a music video on me, they put a mic on me right here, and it's hidden. You can't see it. It'll be right there. And then I got that little patch on my back. All right. That's the recording portion, the battery portion. And I'll have that back there. I'm always walking around, and I suck at acting. You'd think I'd be good at it probably, but I'm not, because I'm like, I know a camera's on me. So what they do is they keep the cameras rolling at all times, right? And they keep my mic rolling at all times, which means if I slip up and say a wordy dirt when I'm on a tractor or whatever I'm doing in a music video, it's going to catch it at some point. So what if they took that and said, hey, let me show you what all Derek says when he's not on screen. Same thing. So Alex Jones's camera guy released that footage. Well, who released that footage from the camera guy? Why did they make that public for everybody to see? And what is he saying? Off camera, but on camera, right? He's got the mic on and he goes, oh, I'm so sick of this Trump guy. This Trump guy? That's the term we got. Alex Jones is calling the supreme commander of the world this Trump guy. I'm so sick of this Trump guy, right? And he says all kinds of other things. That, ladies and gentlemen, are the true colors of the real Alex Jones. Not the Alex Jones you see on the screen. Oh, yeah. Then he told you he was one of the main pieces that got Trump elected. Yeah, and I have a problem. I don't have a problem with y'all calling President Trump just Trump. I have a problem with anybody who thinks they know anything about military or presents themselves as this tough guy and almost makes people think he was military but wasn't military. When you call the Supreme Commander Trump, I don't care what President Trump calls himself. I have a problem with people who are military and veterans calling President Trump Trump. He's not Trump. He's President Trump. He's Commander Trump. He's Supreme Commander Trump in this defined operation. So see, they show people this stuff, but what do people do? Because they already had a preconceived, feeling towards a person, they do what? They support them. That's not what you're supposed to do, ladies and gentlemen. If I turned out to be bad, I won't, because I was put here for a reason. But anybody that you think you like or love, if you hadn't done the research on what is it that they do, and why do I like this person so much? Why do I love this person so much? You don't know anything about their back life. You don't know anything back here. So see, so it's showing people priorities. What do people do? 8 hours a day on their phone, like we're talking about. They're watching one of them, one of those big names they know nothing about back here. They know nothing of what they're doing back here. And then they get them hooked and they like their personality. And then they find out something bad about them. And then what? It's a hard fall. So what I'm trying to teach people and show people what I was put here to do is like, go read this first. Go read the laws. Go read the orders. Go read all the regulations. Go ground yourself as your foundation in this first. When your foundation is in military laws and military orders and strategies and tactics and everything, when you ground yourself with this as your foundation first, then you can look out and go, like if you're a Christian, you can go talk to a Buddhist or a Jehovah's Witness, and your foundation won't be shaken. You can have a conversation with anybody and your foundation won't be shaken. All right. But when your foundation is in this, you won't be shaken and all shook up by all these other things out here because you'll have a solid foundation. But most people don't have a solid foundation. That's why they're shaking what we're talking about. They're rattled. They're, MAGA, they're busted. And, he's busting his faith. No, you're busting your faith. Nothing's changed with the operation. The laws are consistent. And every law that President Trump's using right now, the law's already been there, but the order was put in place in his first term. So it shows you, if it's in his first term and you thought Joe Biden was real, how did those orders get through Joe Biden without being terminated or revoked? How are they still in effect? So see, if people knew that aspect, all this other stuff, you'd find out quick that, why are you idolizing people that you don't know? They don't talk about anything. They talk about the same old bull crap that you lived through prior to President Trump. It's a different face, different name, and they don't give you anything that sharpens your skills or elevates you. So a lot of these chess pieces are being used because they already had an audience. All right. And then it ignites engagement. And President Trump said this specifically, give the people what they want. Well, majority of the people, not you patriots in the comment boxes, but majority of the people, what do they want? Drama. So you got to give it to them. And I hate it. And that's the undesirability part that the law war manual talks about. And it's undesirable for all of you, I'm sure. But that, you know what? Just sit back. That should make you laugh even more. If you're drinking a bourbon or a coffee or whatever you're drinking, you should just sit back and be like, enjoy the show, baby. Because that's what we're doing. We got to give them what they want.
Yeah.
And you use it to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we've all, just quickly, Elisa, we've all got a lot of haters out there, but you have really helped a lot of people understand what's going on behind the scenes with what you've been saying since you came onto the scene, Derek. So thanks very much for that. And I'll guarantee what you just said as well. Even everyone that hates Trump, the first thing they think about when they get up in the morning is, what has that fucking man done today? So everyone is looking, and it's an amazing thing. And I just want to ask you quickly, because Kate said in the chat, what do you think about General Flynn? Now, I personally think that General Flynn and Admiral Rogers was sort of like the two of the front men of this, but I think they flipped a coin to see who's going to be this public, local action equals national impact. And Admiral Rogers has sort of been working behind the scenes, and General Flynn has almost been like the public face of the military, as Trump is the commander-in-chief public face of it. So what do you think General Flynn's role in this is? And is he part of the Q operation, would you say?
Well, that's a real sensitive subject for a lot of people. But, the first thing you got to know about a general, period, just a general outright, is there's been very few, in the sense of, there's no way to know how many retired generals there are exactly, because they don't keep record of that. But the last recording that they have was about 4,600 retired generals since like 2010 or something like that. So retired generals, let's make that specific. So when you look at a general, what people tend to do with a general like General Flynn is they focus in on that general. They forget about all the other generals they know nothing about. And that's unfortunate in some ways. Not that they care, because they don't. They have so much on their plate. But also, a lot of people don't know this in America, especially. But a lot of, of course, I've found that most people outside of the United States are more appreciative of American knowledge than Americans are. So you might find this pretty cool. But every general, once they reach general status, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star. Once they reach that status, they're brought back yearly, sometimes twice, 3 times a year, to meet with the president. Every one of them. All right. So that's very key for people to know. And it's very few generals have been a traitor in history. Very few that have been a defined traitor. Now, someone could be sitting in their house somewhere retired and think all kinds of things and it not be known to the public. But very few generals have been known to the public as an outright traitor. Now, President Trump's going to probably either let them ride them to the sunset, depending on what their role was in humanity. Meaning, if they can't be tried for crimes against humanity or something like that, then if they just did something that was real, not nonchalant in the military, but something that could be punishable via that. One of these got deducted all the way down to went from a general to like I think it was a lieutenant colonel or something, or a major. That's a massive pay grade and humiliation. And that person, more than likely, they're not going to seek an office somewhere, because what will be the first thing people pull up? Oh, aren't you the general that got deducted all the way back down to like a colonel or something? So see, that would be public shame already. So most of those generals, when they've been punished internally like that, they just ride on into that. You never hear from them again. Their family and friends know, and that's enough shame for them right there. So there's been very few that have been world public or U.S. public, announced that, hey, this guy's a traitor. So there's that. Now, there's some things that I don't ever talk about with General Flynn, because there's certain things that I know from other people that's not relevant right now, and it would only confuse people even more. The main thing to focus on is not General Flynn. The main thing to focus on is your military as a whole, and knowing the generals and the admirals active duty and National Guard and Reserve components active. They're also active, though. Those are your key components. But getting to General Flynn specifically, he's a master of 5G information, which is misinformation, 5G warfare. It's misinformation. So since we have Elisa here, we can make a joke, right? We got a lady on board right here. This would be like her asking me or you, does she look fat in a dress? And I'm like, well, if you're like Abraham Lincoln, you freeze up because you're like, well, yeah, it depends on if she looked fat in the dress or not. Right.
It's a no-win question, so you have to answer
That's
strategically.
Well, 5G warfare, though, would be going, if you didn't look fat in a dress, well, there may be a reason for me to tell you look fat in a dress. You may have been planning to go into a party that I couldn't attend that night if I was your man, and I'd be like, you look fat in that dress, and you'd be like, this is my only dress. I'm like, well, you can't go to the party, right? And then you're like, you're right, So then that would be strategy for me to keep you at home from going to the party that was full of a bunch of dudes, right? That's strategy. The other side to it could be if you were fat, but I'm like, no, Lord, no, you ain't fat in that dress. And you're like, oh, baby, right? It's strategy. 5G warfare is a yes when it's a no and a no when it's a yes, right? And it depends on what the operation is. What's the strategy? What's the mission, right? So if people would apply that first, that's exactly what General Flynn is. Then you got to go back to why is he such a key topic? Well, he's a key topic because he was the director of Defense Intelligence Agency with Obama and the real Joe Biden. All right. And if you read General Kellogg's book, War by Other Means, he specifically says that Flynn was not a DC general. He's a general's general, right? Meaning like DC and the whole bureaucracy was not for him, right? And it takes a special kind of general to when you're in that position, you're not a general in the command anymore from the standpoint of, hey, I got troops under me, their welfare and all these other things, but you still have to be hard and tough. And if you get a soldier on your desk that had a DUI or something like, well, they got 3 DUIs, they've been counseled this many times, been courts-martialed, we need to get them out of service. And, that's what a general's doing over here in active duty. In a position like the Defense Intelligence Agency, you're still a general by your rank, and you're still a general by getting that nomination and that bid to get in that position, but you're not a general anymore by what you're doing on a daily basis. You're to bring your general status into the Defense Intelligence Agency, but you're doing the Defense Intelligence Agency's roles, jobs, and duties. So Flynn would have been in there seeing all the crap, I won't use the other term, but all the stuff that they were doing in the Defense Intelligence Agency and all the people who are reporting there and what they're doing, right? So, and we all know it was chaos because that's the whole point of draining the swamp. Well, it was swampy. And so you got this badass general from general means, from the military side, coming in there going, what the heck? Well, then that means what? Conviction and conscience, right? So he's going, I'm a general. This is all, what the hell is going on in here, right? So then all of a sudden, when you're putting that spotlight, it's publicity, right? Because if he's fired, it's publicity. If there's a problem, it's publicity. If there's any kind of collusion, there's publicity. Anything that gets caught or put out, it's publicity, right? So that's what exactly happened. And that's why in the 2020 debate, even though Joe had already been replaced at that point, that's when President Trump, in the key line where he said, we have it all, we caught them all, what was right before it? He said, it was you, Joe. It was you who recommended the Logan Act to Obama on General Flynn. It was you, Joe. They tried a coup, ladies and gentlemen. They tried a coup. The coup was tried in 2016, ladies and gentlemen. That's why all of this right now, that one line also proves this whole thing was a shadow government, continuity government. It's all an operation. The actual coup was tried on President Trump in 2016, not in 2020. All right, but it had to be played this way to the people because the people were not what? Engaged, locked in, knowing what's going on. So you run it again. You just run it again. And by the end of all this, people will appreciate and have gratitude. Majority of people will once they see what all has been released. So you run it again, as the saying is. But that's when he said, it was you, Joe. You recommended the Logan Act on General Michael Flynn. They tried a coup, and we have it all. We've caught them all. So see, that was a president would not have made such a massive proclamation, a massive statement if he didn't already have every single thing from top to bottom, forwards, backwards, everything, forensically, whatever term you want to put on it, without knowing that we got you, we caught you, and we're going to show the world all your trash. So you let it play out, right? You take them all down. You publicly put this out there. So General Flynn was in that position, all right? And he was the one that his life got all that, the ringer, etc. So, you know, what people will get confused with is right out the gate, 2022, instantly, certain podcasters that had access to the replaced General Flynn, the General Flynn that everybody's seeing is not the same General Flynn, ladies and gentlemen. It's not. Generals, every general I know, if you know, they're good looking from the standpoint of they're hardened. They don't smile a lot. They're real like grainy skin because they've been through a lot. That's what get to a general does. So people need to realize the replacement is not a bad thing always. It depends on what it is, but that is not the same General Flynn. So what's happened is all these podcasters that get the replacement Flynn, they're asking him things they should never ask in the first place because he's a general. I'm not. I can say what I'm saying because generals are under a whole different standard of the law when it comes to retirement and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Generals are. And that's a known in the military. I wasn't a general. I am retired. I have to be careful what I say, but I show everybody the laws and the orders of what's invoked that's already been made public. But I'm retired military. I can still be tried under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is a courts martial. And you don't want to be tried in the courts martial if they got dirt on you. All right, you'd much rather be in a civil court of some sort with a jury that might be dumb like most Americans are. All right, that they're like, oh, he's a veteran. I love him. Right. So you'd much rather be tried in federal or civil court than you would a military courts martial or a military commission or a tribunal. So that's why it's so important. So, General Flynn, right out the gate, people were trying to ask him about the military operation. It's not a military operation. The military's not trying to save you. And what did people do? They listened to the general. They didn't go read the laws. They didn't go read the orders because the laws and orders most certainly. But if General Flynn alluded to what's going on, guess what? Then the massive chess piece is shown. Because at that time, they didn't want it shown to the mass audience. They knew that the little intricacies, and not that people out there listening, you're not little individually, you know, you're not little like that, but they knew the little audiences that found me, the ones that did read and study, they'd realize, holy crap, it is here. It most certainly is here. It is all here. But they knew the mass majority wasn't going to go, oh, my God, this Derek Johnson dude, you got to go read. If they did, this whole operation would have moved along a lot quicker because that's what they do want ultimately. But they knew the mass majority wouldn't do that. All right. So that's why they didn't shut me down or tell me to be quiet or anywhere because it is in law. It's all there. The blueprint's there. People have to read, study, and apply. But General Flynn got pinned, so he had to block me. I never added him anyway. I've never even called him out. There's no reason for me to call him out. But I had to separate myself strategically, and I was told to do so by our same people. We have the same people. One of my key guys is, well, I won't say too much, but he flies the real General Flynn around. All right. But, you know, so basically we had to separate each other in another manner because our audience is not the same audience. It is ultimately, but when it comes to infinite things and, you know, finite things, it's not because most of his audience are not reading, studying. They're just looking at him as General Flynn, General Flynn. And that's not me knocking General Flynn. That's just calling the audience the spade it is, right? all of you in the audience out there in the comment boxes, you are the readers, the studiers, the appliers, right? You are the apps. You're more the Patriots than anyone out there, right? And that's a you know, kind of like a sword of allegiance or whatever, like going, hey, we're crowning you the real Patriots, right? But this is a military operation, and Flynn's role is to go around doing certain things. So, you know, it ultimately plays out in the end because General Flynn is not the face. President Trump is. So I just wish people would learn it from that angle to see that, look, you know, stop pinning people. It's not a pinning thing. It's not a pinning game. He has a role to play. I have a role to play. And it all is going to come out in a wash over here when they're ready to show you everything they're showing you. And if I may, I know I'm talking a lot, but, you know, let me show you someone in the mainstream. Huckabee, Mike Huckabee, you know, Sarah Huckabee's dad. Mike Huckabee just put out on his platform. So here's a mainstream guy who never talks strategic laws, orders, infinite law. He don't get into the intricacies. He just put on his audience about fatigue. He said, we have a lot of our audience dropping off because they're fatigued because they haven't seen what? Justice. So here's a mainstream guy sitting here telling you that his big audience, massive audience, is dropping off comments, likes, loves because they haven't seen justice. And he said, what? What did he say? I can guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, that the Department of Justice is working on everything. But see, this thing was so massive. I mean, we're talking about trafficking, rings, right? Multiple different forms of trafficking, rings. President Trump, follow the money, right? So the rings, all the different rings. Then you had your central banks, the decentralization of those. Well, when you decentralize something, you have to have something to do what? Replace it. This stuff ain't easy, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about systems that need replaced. Then you got to find people who can do what? Code the system, run the system, maintain the system. People don't realize how massive this whole thing is. And we're talking about the world because we were all what? Connected to each other. UK, Australia, New Zealand, China, North Korea, they're all using the what? US dollar more than they were their own currencies. So see, we're all linked together. And so it had to be a what? Decentralization means, hey, you use your freaking currency. Why are you using ours mainly? Right? So all these different things. And that's the layman's terms for it. But that's what did dumb American congressmen do? We didn't account for the money that has a serial number on it. So what did they do? They kept printing money. And then what did they do? They taxed every living hell out of you Americans. So they don't account for this money. They print more money and then tax you for it.
Yep.
And then what they call that what? Inflation. And that's why inflation was just insane. And the economy is never anything a president should brag about, except for when you're doing what you're doing right now. But when President Trump gets done, there's going to be a balanced budget. There's going to be more money in Americans' pockets than you've ever seen in your life. You won't be working 2 and 3 jobs. You won't have income tax and all these other things. He's already told you this, right? So when you truly see a true balanced budget, then you're going to realize what took place. And this whole thing is not, so in 20 and 30 years, no president should be bragging about the economy. If you're a gay Buddhist, what does gas prices have to do with that? Not a dang thing. Your gas costs ain't got a thing with you being a gay Buddhist. All right. If the egg cost is up, what's that got to do with you being a Pentecostal Christian? Ain't got a thing to do with your religion. Ain't got a thing to do. So the economy is never supposed to be a bragging point. The economy is supposed to work for everybody, right? It's not supposed to be a president gets in and, we jacked this price up and then this audience down here pays for it. Then the next president gets in and this audience here goes up and this one. It's not supposed to look like that. So see, if people realize what the whole thing's about, then they're going to realize that you're going to watch a world decentralization, a world clean out, and it's going to be a massive reset. And you just got to hang on because President Trump, has he been wrong about anything? No. So if he's not been wrong and he's sitting here telling you that, hey, July 4th is going to be a big day in U.S. history, well, it's not just going to be U.S., it's going to be world, right? Because it's 250. His birthday is a month before that, so we're working real close to it. If people just chill out and hang on.
Well said. I think it's also part, like you just said, how the economy and that should not be a bragging point or a point for presidents. However, people have been so brainwashed to think that so he has to kind of speak and meet them at their level to bring them to this new understanding, right? Which is frustrating for those of us who understand. And I've said it many, many times on our podcast. Nothing gets me more frustrated than I can make an excuse for some of the normies, if you will, because they don't understand. They haven't taken the time to educate themselves. So they're just having pure frustration on stuff. But I can't make an excuse for people in our community who sit around and bitch about how things aren't happening fast enough, especially when they're supposed to know just how incredibly difficult, all inclusive. I mean, I don't even know the words to use about what's really going on. And you're sitting there complaining that everything is off by 6 years or 5 years. It should have happened.
Well, to look to that point, me being a military guy, and my family is so rich in military. I mean, and that's not knocking anybody, because my family is not that kind. We don't knock people who haven't served. Everybody has a role and play in life, but my family, it's just about every male in my family served in the military somehow, whether it was National Guard or active duty. And I say that to say that if a person could find that appreciation for military, but not just military, but not just thinking about, oh yeah, you fight for our freedom. No, the military laws, the military orders, the military regulations, the military strategies, the military tactics. Once someone realizes that complexity of it, but also the awesomeness or whatever you want to use around it, but especially in this situation, if you'd have asked every one of my family members, the highest ranking or the most, whatever you would consider the most elite, which, no one should be considered that way. But if you'd have asked anybody this, hey, 30 years ago, we're going to have an operation in the future. And 9.5 years in, this is what all is going to take. It has been accomplished already in just 9.5 years. Boom, 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 boom. If people would understand that, I mean, even myself, who people do, if you do follow me and study me, you do realize I do know a lot, right? Well, if you would take it the right way, and I'm sitting here telling you, when I know a lot, and I'm sitting here saying 9.5 years, we've accomplished all these things. And President Trump they have it up on the websites. They have it on official.gov, all his accomplishments. The little scroll thing is so little. How many people's read through that? Not many people. Because if you see the little scroll thing being a little bitty thin line, that means all these accomplishments that he's accomplished. Where are the Clintons? Where are the Obama? They're not in office, ladies and gentlemen. You could say the people, the naysayers go, well, they're out there still. They ain't in office, though. They ain't been nowhere remotely close to the White House in 10 years. All right? Where are they? And every bit of what President Trump's doing is what? It's an offensive. It's on the offense. Every one of these people are responding. They're on the what? They're defending themselves, right? President Trump's in the offense. His whole thing is an offense. If people would realize the offense and defense and what that means, right? Every bit of his actions are offensive. Well, if you go back to 21 to 25, how couldn't quote unquote Joe be on the offense? Nothing that quote unquote Joe did lawfully, which he didn't do anything lawfully. And President Trump said it never existed in the first place. He's already alluded to that for the Patriots. They know that. But for the people that don't know that, nothing was on the offense. Every bit was Trump did this, he did that, the whole 4 years, right? But lawfully. Now, what Democrats and liberals will do is say, well, your president, he blames Biden for the economy. That's not all lawfully. The economy is supposed to be for everybody. We're talking about militarily what has been done. Every bit of 21 to 25 was everything for President Trump. Quote unquote, Joe had not one single Title 10 or Title 32 invocation. That's all military, but you got to know military to know that. So if you went to every military person that I knew 20 years ago and said, hey, in such and such years, we're going to have this operation. defined by military law, our military law. And we're going to do this. In 9.5 years, ladies and gentlemen, that is moving. That's what you call kicking ass and taking names, right? So it's, I don't know, like if a smile can't show you like how badass it is and to be a part of it, like I don't know what can, right? And let me tell you, if I could just brag just a little, I don't mean it the wrong way, but let me just tell you something. When I got out of the military, I didn't know what was going on with my personal life. I'm like, what the hell? Why are they retiring me? I didn't do 20 years, ladies and gentlemen. I know that. But I retired, full retirement. So how did I retire and not do 20 years? You got to ask yourself that. I know how, and my people know how. And I went to multiple generals, multiple colonels, multiple congressmen I knew, and I said, what the hell, right? And I'm like, get me back in. What the hell's going on here? Because I had every contact, and I still have them, known to man, that if they were going to pull the string, they could have pulled the string. And they were like, you're going to serve again. Don't worry. I'm like, how? Like, so, because every veteran, when you're just a regular veteran, you think, oh, that's my community, right? And that's not knocking the community, but when you want to be active duty for 30 years, 35 years, right? And you got put out early and you're like, the hell? Why did it, what the hell? Right? That's what I had. So when I went back to these key people, they were like, you're going to serve again. Don't worry. I'm like, that's all you can tell me? So I'm sitting there like, and I did. I went through what every other person's gone through in your life. If you've ever been in a standstill in your life where you didn't know what forward and backwards looked like, and backwards look forward, and it backwards look more forward than forward look forward. I've been there before. We're all human. Even the highest general is still a human, ladies and gentlemen. They're still a person. President Trump is still a human. He's still a person, right? So many people look at certain things as it's like it's not real. And it is. We're just as real. Operators, just as real as you. Every special operator out there that I know, just as real as you. They have lives just like you do. Married, kids, some do, some don't. They have lives, right? So I'm over there like, man, what in the world? And I did. I went through this transit period where, remember that old game where you're twiddling your thumbs, right? I've been there before, but guess what? I started looking at everything that Obama had done because I served under Obama. I didn't serve under President Trump. So I went in way back here. So I started looking in at what had been going on lawfully with the courts-martial process of the medical and other fields because I'm like, what in the heck are they doing? I mean, it was massive cutbacks. Everybody remembers this. Obama had a massive drawdown in military. That's what President Trump calls the breaking of the back of the military. So I went and studied all that, what was going on lawfully. That's where the answers were at. They were breaking the back of the military on purpose. They were getting it at our weakest moment where we couldn't defend ourselves, right? Which is scary in another manner. Because what most people did then, they still abided by the law. Even if they didn't know the law, but if some big attorney or especially a president or something said, the law says this, most people go, oh, okay. They didn't go read the law, right? So that's the scary part. And so I started reading that, and that's what, I started doing the documents when President Trump rolled down the escalator. I started typing these things. I started making notes. Well, you couldn't have the full blueprint until you had the full blueprint. Until things were invoked. So 2017, I started writing. I was like, he did this, he did that. But especially 2016 when he said, 200 generals. That's a quote my grandfathers and great uncles only talked about, ladies and gentlemen. And you'd have had a known man like that who served back then who said, never again will we let what happened in this country happen under JFK. If we get a chance, we're going to take it over. 200 generals said that. Not all at the same time, but those military generations heard generals say that. It was a collective in another form. And President Trump said that specific quote that my grandfathers and great uncles who are all been passed, they were passed at the time he said that. And I'm sitting there going, ha, 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 ha. Well, then that's what? You got to go back to our generations. I know both of you. Y'all are older than me, and I'm not going to pick on you two. But I got you both. But I'm saying, if my generation, the last generation, had to memorize things, we had to write things down. See, if people didn't memorize or write things down, then guess what happens? It gets lost, right? And that's what every one of our generations before us had to do. What? You had to write it. You had to memorize it, right? We used to walk around knowing all our phone numbers. I can't name a phone number now. I can, specifically my dad and mom, but most people don't. You don't remember numbers anymore. You don't have to. It's saved in your phone as so-and-so, right? You don't know their number. And if you were in a dire situation, oh God, what's so-and-so's number? Oh, you know them as Uncle Karen, right? Or Aunt Tommy, all right? I say that funnily, using male and female contradictions there, right? So when you look at those things, right, and you tie that all in, it's a memorization. And I remember what my grandpa's. I listened to my grandpas. I listened to my great uncles, and I just remember that quote. And President Trump said that in 2016, and that was the dinger. I was like, oh, I know what's going on here. I know what's about to happen. And that's when I started documenting. But you had to know military law. You had to know military government. You had to know what a puppet government is, a shadow government, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare. And that's what led it to that. So if people would realize that President Trump said, veterans, remember your oath. You're going to serve again. And, and that's where I tell people it's not braggadocious, but if there was an immediate involuntary callback tomorrow, guess who goes back? Me, right? Mm-hmm. Not you. So see, that goes back to these podcasters out there. That's why it's very keen. You got to be careful who you're listening to, because if they're misleading you, and it's taking your feelings and emotions somewhere that it don't need to go, because there's an absolute blueprint that shows you positivity, no stress, no anxiety, nothing but good. You get that, then that's where a guy like me has to show passion and get mad. That's why some people don't like me. It's because I'm passionate, but it's because I'm operational. And I know that there's not going to be an involuntary callback like that. But if there was, I'm going. They're not, right? And that's why you want people who know the law. You should be proud that a military member knows the regulations, knows the laws, and can lay it out there for you. That's the whole point of being in the military, and that's what President Trump's doing. That our officers moving forward are going to be fine men and women, and they're going to walk a line like no one's ever walked before. So anyway, I just have to say that sometimes because people forget, that, being human is just being human. And we get in transits just like you do. We get in time periods, but we just are a little bit tougher sometimes depending on what it is. But, but that's what took place. And if you would have told me even 20 years ago, hey, I thought it would take a little bit longer, just because of the educational levels in America alone. No, it's there's no word for it except for biblical, historical, and monumental. Those are the three words.
Yeah. I mean, every time someone blackpills with me and sends me a bit of clickbait, have you seen this? I just say to them, have you forgotten? All of a sudden, they just forget what they've witnessed over the last 10 years unfolding. Just go back to that.
It's very frustrating. So this might be a good time to pivot a little bit, because Derek, you're going to be coming to New York to be a key speaker at the Awakening Summit, which is in New York in Lynbrook, Long Island, April 25th and 26th. And I wanted to ask you, which we're kind of doing this with all the speakers, we're going to be chatting with all of them on our show and other shows. What would you say, knowing what you might or might not know about New York, its reputation, the people, which I can tell you as a New Yorker, we're not all liberals. We're not all asleep, but a lot of people are. What would you say would be kind of your goal in coming to New York and being part of this event? Like, what would you want sort of the end result of you coming and the, what you bring to this event to be?
Well, I mean, I've heard Scott McKay say this before. He's like, I don't know what everybody else is there for, but I know what I'm there for. I know sometimes, like on my own podcast, I get kind of, it sounds like it sounds like a braggadocious thing. It sounds kind of cocky, whatever the words would be out there. But my whole goal with every audience is to say, look, I'm not knocking everybody else, but this is a defined military operation, meaning it takes precedent over everything else. And if that's not your first thought every morning, is, the appreciation level and the gratitude level of President Trump, the military, the generals, the admirals, the world leaders, the capitulated nations all working together. To me, that is so precedent for everybody, no matter where I am. So I don't necessarily, I think, the good thing about military is you look at the world as the world. You don't see boundaries and state lines and cultures. You see it, but it's not like it. You just blend in, right? And every bit of this operation is for everybody. It's the good versus the evil. It's the light versus the darkness. It's not a Republican, Democrat. It's not a conservative, liberal. It's not. So it's like when we talk in the military, if we cut our arm, we all bleed red, but we joke and say, Army, it's typically known as green. So we all bleed green, right? So it's kind of that. It's going, hey, this whole thing's an operation. The whole reason we're in this building, and this president's talking right now, is because of the military operation going on first, right? And so when I speak, if people don't have that as their foundation, they're always going to be shaken, because that is the driving force of what's taking place. That is why you have President Trump. That's why you have the dash. That's why you have the whole thing. Is it undesirable? Yes. But, that's only because you're focused on gas costs. If you never travel, you don't have to worry about it. So, there's certain things that I try to bring to the table to show people that, what are your priorities? And that's the key thing. So, New York, yeah, you get labeled for New York City. People forget about Buffalo. People forget about Plattsburgh. People forget about all the other places we can sit here and name. But it's kind of like Illinois. I have some friends from Illinois, and I'm like, is it the state of Chicago now, or is it Illinois? Because everybody just says Chicago, and I'm like, there's way more to Illinois than Chicago. Right. The same thing with New York. It's so much more. I mean, New York has more countryside, which of course every state has countryside, but New York has some of the most beautiful country outside of New York City that you can see. And my dad, I have to brag on him a little bit. He was in the first ever Special Operations Command in the Air Force. But my dad was stationed in Plattsburgh years ago when they had a base there. So, I've always, people hated me in the South, talking about haters. My friends always ragged on me, but my dad raised me to be a New York Yankee fan. That's like super, that's eccentric for the South. They're like, how are you a Yankee fan? That's blasphemous for you to be Southern and a Yankee fan. And I'm like, well, my dad was stationed in Plattsburgh. And my dad won Airman of the Year 2 years in a row, which is a big deal. And so he got to go meet all the Yankees. But he was a Yankee fan before then, because when you grew up poor in the country in the South, all you had was a radio in the 40s. And he was like, I sat by that radio as a kid, and I knew every player on the Yankees, because the Yankees were the only ones who dominated airwaves. So he was like, if you had a radio, that's what you listened to. So I became a Yankees fan because of my dad. And then what's cool is I ended up going to college at Alabama. I'm sporting Bama today because we beat the rear end of a team last night in basketball to make it to the Sweet 16. That was, I mean, we should, we should have never beat them, but we beat them. But I went to college with a girl at Alabama. She never said anything. And we're still friends to this day. She's a Patriot. She actually follows me and everything, but and she never said a word. I'm sitting there like, I said, why do you always go to New York? Because when we were in college, everybody thought everybody's broke, right? Because if you're broke, they're broke. But she wasn't broke. And I'm like, she's like, well, I'm going to the Yankees game. And then she'd show a photo. And I'm like, how are you in the locker room? What the heck is going on? Well, she never said a word. This was so cool. This is so cool how some people. So this is before Google was like super popular, but there was a way to search, and I'm like, her last name was so unique, and I'm like, I'm looking her up, and I'll be danged if her dad was not the Bloomberg bomber from the New York Yankees, right? And I'm like, you've been my friend the whole time. You did not freaking tell me your dad is the Bloomberg bomber. Are you serious right now? Your dad's a Yankee great? Are you serious right now? So anyway, that, see, that's passion, excitement. So New York is, I got my opportunity to see New York City 4 years ago and drive through Brooklyn and Manhattan, and it is a whole other level of breathtaking, because you're like, oh my God, how do people live in this every day? If you're a cowboy, country boy, you live in the middle of nowhere like me, it's really, you're glad someone else is driving. You want someone who's from there to drive, because you're like, okay, this is not what I want to do. So, I embrace my culture where I am. I embrace the environment. But, in cases like this, most of the people are patriots in that audience. They already know what they're coming for. If there's anybody new there, then I treat it like that. But everybody needs a foundation. And the foundation is the laws, the orders of the land that support our foundation, not the ones. I don't ever talk about laws anyway that don't support, but it's just getting people to go, hey, this should be your daily dosage, and then branch out. If you want to study aliens or whatever, but your foundation should be always this. And when your foundation is solid, this, that, and other won't be shaken. So, I don't know. It's just, it's hard. That's the hardest part of being in my position, I think, that people don't see, is that it's not knocking everybody else, but if people's foundation is not on what is President Trump working with, it's, but anyway.
Yeah,
so
I love
people,
that answer, because that's the that you're absolutely right. That's why it was so important, at least for us putting the event together, to have you there, because like you said, a lot of these other things are offshoots that you could go down and you can look at, and rabbit holes you can study. But if you don't really understand what's been going on for the last 10, basically since he started coming down that escalator, and then you're not as well-rounded in your understanding and education. And that's what we're hoping to bring to a lot of the people. And many of them are, but it's just important to have that reiterated. So I'm glad you see it that way.
Well, the military operation encapsulates all of it, doesn't it? It's the military operation that's exposing all this election frauds, but exposing everything else, taking down the child trafficking. It is the whole thing. Right.
Oh,
exactly.
Well, and that's the whole world reset too. That resets the world, not just America first. That resets the world, because, and speaking of the Defense Intelligence Agency, that's another thing. People right now, if you got your panels pulled up, you can go over to a new tab and you can look up the Defense Intelligence Agency publication 2019. It's all about Iran, but it ties in North Korea's underground tunnels. So it talks about the underground subterranean warfare, which it tells you have thousands, plural, heavy thousands of underground tunnels. Now, there's some things I'm still haven't been given the green light to talk about, specifically with Iran and other nations that are still pretty much draft classified. But I could say for that it's not funny in one way, but it is in another manner, because I already know it's taken care of. But the fact that wasn't funny is what Iran really had in underground. I always say would make the hair on a turtle shell stand up. And if you know what a turtle shell looks like, it ain't got no hair, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So we talking about some scary, I won't say the word, but if you were going to get scared about anything, if you knew what all of us knew in the military, more specifically nuclear, yeah, and it's going to be unveiled. I mean, all that will be unveiled at the right time and when people will be appreciative of it. But But the defense intelligence, so that ties in your General Flynn, that ties in your DIA, and it ties in all those different agencies that work on this. So it's that's a
exactly. So I mean, how do you think this is gonna, no date fagging and giving too much away that you can talk about, but how do you think this is going to unfold over the next few months coming up to July the 4th with elections being stolen, being put out? Are we going to see the EBS, these Gitmo tribunals and all the things that we think has been happening militarily behind the scenes over this long period of time?
Well, there's one thing that happened this past week that I can't tell people yet, but you can obviously tell by my smile. But it was more direct towards me of something that's in the bigger realm that's already been set up. So it's a double. So it's it directly affects me on a little, in a good way, but it's already set up in a big way. And that ties into certain things that I've already alluded to with why I'm here. Low man on the totem pole, but still in a position. But the key is that you got to go the foundation, right? President Trump. What did President Trump say 3 years ago? Almost 4 now, but he said specifically, he gave people 2 markers. He said Memorial Day 2025 will be the start, and you'll start seeing that, to July the 4th, 2026. And he said every day after July 4th, 2026, every single day, he said it just like that, every single day we will celebrate America, every single day. Now, I tie in this as well, because we're human. We're all still human. President Trump's a human being. His 80th birthday is June the 14th. Now, most everybody knows, if you've lived any kind of life, or you have parents or you have grandparents, the 80s, not many people make it to their 90s, right? 80s are those years of the glory years that you should be celebrating your elders and your family and really just cherishing them and sitting with them, talking to them, and memories, etc. And then talking about memories. So President Trump's turning 80. That's a big milestone, right? So when like most of these patriots do that are in the comment boxes and at these events, when you know this, though, for your friends and family out there that don't, you tell them that. You say, look, military law shows what's going on. It's all for humanity's sake. It's not a military strategy for just military and authoritarian and all this other stuff. It's a world operation. All right. President Trump said he would be exonerated. Well, the left don't look like it to the average Republican out there that he's exonerated. So what would make President Trump exonerated? It'd be the revealing of what's been taking place, every aspect of it. So while they have Obama, why is Obama piping up all of a sudden? All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know that terminology, piping up just means barking or talking trash again. All right, so Obama's back on the scene. Hillary's back on the scene. Bill's back on the scene. Where have they been? Why weren't they boisterous all throughout 21, 22, 23, 24 as much as they are right now? Why did they disappear during that time period? Well, why not when they showed the world that Joe had a Democrat president, Democrat House, and Democrat Senate, complete Democrat control, ladies and gentlemen, from 21 to 23? They couldn't terminate a single anything about President Trump. That shows you right there that it's all military government. Because if you know just straight up basic federal law of the United States, he couldn't terminate a single thing with a full Democrat control. And President Trump on March 16th last week in a press conference, what did he say? He said, former president congratulated me and told me, I wish I'd have done that with Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, there's only three. Well, I'm going to say 2. I gave the punchline away. There's only 3 former presidents. Because Joe wasn't a former president. He wasn't a president by law. And President Trump's already validated this. but you got to know laws to know the validation, because he hadn't said Joe Biden was never president. He said by actions he was never president. That's why you got to know the language. There's only 2 former presidents, because he told the guy, one of the reporters said, was it George Bush? He went, no. Well, does President Trump lie? No. So that only leaves 2, Bill Clinton and Obama. All right. So Bill Clinton, that wouldn't be a good look if President Trump was buddies with him, because that people go, oh, Epstein, Bill's in fact. It ain't Bill Clinton. It's Obama. All right. And I've already shown it 4 years ago. I'm on a podcast and everybody thought I'm crazy. That's fine. Who would be the game changer? Who would be a game changer to unify the world? It wouldn't be Bill Clinton. It wouldn't be George Bush. It'd be Obama. Right. And I try to teach people that in military law, in military government, in irregular warfare, and in unconventional warfare, guess what's under those? Special operations. You know what special operations we do, ladies and gentlemen? We do these things called what? Psychological operations. What's psychology? It plays with your mind. Well, we're not playing with your mind the wrong way. If you'll read the laws and orders, it's for humanity. The ones that played with your mind was the deep state and the swamp for the past 150 years. Lawfully played with your mind. They deceived you, right? We're taking it, using it against them and cleaning the world out. That's why they use President Trump. Why? Because he's a billionaire, right? But he was what? Not politician, but he wasn't military. So he's straight down the middle. If he would have been a general or an admiral in the military, if they'd have used a general and admiral, let's say it that way, then what would the world think? Oh, this is all military coup. They're taking over the world. You can't do that with President Trump. He's right down the middle. He wasn't in the military, but he wasn't a politician. So see, once you learn the strategy, it's perfect, because they're using these massive chess pieces around the world, all these world leaders. And when all the world leaders come together and they use the EAS, because then no one could do what? No one could, well, that's AI. That's not real. I don't believe that. If you use the emergency alert system, then guess what happens? All your phones, all your computers, and all your TVs, one accord. You're not getting out of it. Everybody will see it. Everybody will be talking about it. And what have they been showing you? That's why they use the Charlie Kirk Memorial at a massive auditorium with no casket, no body present. When they put the whole administration in one building, ladies and gentlemen, that would have been a breach of national security. That would have been stupid on the part of President Trump if that would have been real. But I can show you how it wasn't, because it ties into what they're doing. Melania documentary, the arenas, they're showing you what people love. They love movies, and they love concerts, or they love gatherings like that. And they love popularity like that. And they show that the Charlie Kirk Memorial got hundreds and hundreds of millions of views all around the world of people who didn't even know who this guy was. So it shows you what? The communication system. Why did the Army and the Navy transfer all communications to the Space Force in 22 and 23? Elon Musk put up what? 60 Starlink satellites a year starting in what? 2020? Oh, so we have control of what? The world's communication systems. That's why they showed the little guys over in the continent of Africa in a little third world country doing the Trump dance. Guess what they have communications to? Third world countries, right? So everybody will be a beneficiary of seeing this revelation. So what do you do with President Trump? You do what? You have other people exonerate him. And Obama will be a unifier, because what does the left think of Obama? Oh, the left thinks he's a great father, a great husband, a great leader, a great speaker. So if all of a sudden, EAS, Obama, President Trump, all these leaders, every leader, Jim Carrey, all the actors, takes the mask off. All these, you just talk about all the waves of everything that takes place in one accord. Then what happens? Nobody will be, most everybody will be in a oh my God, what am I? Right?
Yeah.
Because every phone and every TV and every computer would be on the same thing. And you could, hey, what's your phone doing? Well, it's on this too. Right? No one would be able to say they couldn't see it. So that would be a perfect thing to do. I don't know if they're going to do it that way, but it'd be perfect because that's what unifies the world. Because this whole operation was not to keep the little head button everywhere. And, well, I don't believe in this. Well, I don't believe in that either. It wasn't that. It's not even about that. It's getting people's priorities back in line and going, hey, look, if you believe in aliens and you don't, big deal. It's okay. It's not a game changer, right? The game changer is our security. That's our game changer. Security, overall health, right? But that's through security. That's not talking about the other portions that people talk about health, but that's our security, our mental and physical health, right? So you do that, it's a game changer. I've said this before 4 years ago, and people were, oh my God, you just said Obama. I didn't say Obama's good. I just said they could use him for a pawn. All right. But at the same time, it goes back to in a defined military operation, a lot of people who look good could be bad. A lot of people who look bad could be good. And that's where I'm trying to teach people is that if you don't know irregular and unconventional warfare and the laws, I don't know another word for clear. I do, but everything in votes right now outlines a clear blueprint strategy of a military government, a military occupation, a continuity government, government exile. Every bit of President Trump's speeches, everything he talks about, it's all law of war manual terms. Which is international law as well. It's not federal government anything. So leading up to his birthday, you can start with his birthday doing certain things leading to it. It's already looking this way. There's certain things he's already alluding to, like the press conference where he said a former president, Bill Clinton would not be that dude, right? Because he already has a stain already out there, and he would be called what they call an expendable. Like they would be willing to cut. The Democrats and liberals would cut ties with Bill and Hillary like that if it came down to Obama and Bill. If you went to a liberal and said, okay, if you had to choose one, Obama or Bill, that's a no-brainer. Even for a liberal would cut ties with Bill Clinton so quick if you gave them a 50-50 option of Bill or Obama. They would cut ties. So it's a no-brainer. So see, what people don't realize is like, well, why would President Trump hammer Obama and this? Well, because it's strategy. It's engagement, and we're not through the operation yet. The 45-47, you're in the first part of the 4 of the 47. You're not to the 7 portion yet. You're still in the 47, and you're still in the early portion of it. Now, I'm not saying it's going all the way to 2029. I'm not saying that either. But it's alluding to how they're going to bring the world into a unification process. And that is the children, ultimately, because children, if you can't unify over a child, there's something wrong with you. Like there is something wrong with a person who cannot like get mad or pissed off or angry over a child being just even spoken to the wrong way. We don't even have to get to the stuff that they do with them that I've seen firsthand from the trafficking portions of the operations. I know plenty of operators out there that's been in these tunnels, etc. You don't want to even this. You've seen something, you ain't seen what they've seen. So if you can't get pissed off just straight off at someone who even just talks down to a child, then something wrong with you, right? And I feel that way about anybody who talks down to a woman already. So when it comes to a child, if you can't unify over that, there's something wrong with you. So they're going to have, and they just had an article out just the other day. Cash Patel said 6,200 children have been rescued in the last year. All right. Now, I know that's already taken place. But to the audience out there, the target, they don't know that. So see, they got to see that in live time because it's escalating, and they're building this up to our celebration of our 250. And what should give people out there that maybe are still in a restless position or fatigue, if we got to 250, July 4th, if you get to July 5th, July 10th, just name it after there. If we were still in this massive dog-eat-dog, stupid chaos like people think it is, that would take away from our 250. If you really think about it, our 250, you and I, all of us right here, sitting right here, we probably will live. We might live to the 275. We're not going to live to the 300 more than likely, right? Because you look at where we are. 250 is a big deal where we are right now. It's a big deal because we're all here right now in the present, and we're living right here right now, right? So that's a big deal for every American to see a republic make it 250 years. There's not been many make it that long. And the most that ever made it to any length of time, they got overtaken by an outright democracy, right? Because we're not an outright democracy. So if people would realize that, what President Trump's building up to, now I've got to see his best friends talk. I know a lot of his personal friends, but one of his best friends that he has known him the longest, I got to see him at Mar-a-Lago one night in a little tiny setting, and a cool guy. And he said, I'm the only friend that he lets call Don. He calls him Donnie. And I'm like, I can't call. I would never be able to. If I was his best friend, I wouldn't be able to. But he said, I'm the only one who gets to call him Donnie. And he said, what a lot of people forget about my friend Donnie is this. He said, two things. One, he wants you to be a fighter. All right. Don't be the guy outside the ring barking. Get in the ring and fight. He don't care if you get your head knocked off. Be willing to get in the ring and get your head knocked off. The other thing about my friend Donnie, he said, is this, separate from that, but is this. He said, right when he looks like he's going to lose, that's when my friend Donnie comes roaring right back, right? So it's a part of his whole persona, right? That's his whole image. So it's not that they're playing games with people, but the whole thing works perfectly strategically to look like Obama's coming back and he's talking trash and Hillary's talking trash and so and so. And when you know the laws read what they read, and then what really puts the cherry on top is going to, okay, if Obama was behind the scenes and people thought Obama was bad, but if Joe was president, they displayed to the world again from 21 to 23, a Democrat president, a Democrat House, a Democrat Senate. In poker, you know what they call that? A royal flush. So why wouldn't Joe, if President Trump is a king, a dictator, and a Nazi, why didn't they terminate every single thing by President Trump? They would have had the power to. By the authority and power of the legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial, they'd have had the power to terminate the tariffs. They could have terminated all the orders. Why didn't they do it? And then what I showed in my podcast last night, that's most recent, that validates what I've been talking about the whole time, and you'd have to know military to know it, but the War Powers Resolution Act, it's unconstitutional history-wise, but President Trump is using it against the deep state, against the corrupt Congresses in the past. He's using it against them by utilizing it. What did he say in the State of the Union? I don't need congressional authorization. I already have it. The only thing in the War Powers Act, ladies and gentlemen, that refers directly to President Trump, the others are applications in general. The only one that directly relates in the War Powers is Section 1550 that I've been talking about because it's dated. It's dated in the clause in the War Powers Act. It says December the 20th, 2019. That's the day President Trump established the Space Force. The Global Fragility Act, all these tie in on December the 20th, 2019. And that's specific because it says temporary codification because it's a part of the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. It's temporary, meaning it's not for future presidents. This is a strategic plan, right? So what recently took place? They showed the world that the Senate has failed twice to pass a resolution. They don't have to pass a resolution. Section 1550 is a resolution, right? So there's two validations of that. That's already a resolution. And then two, it specifically ties into President Trump. So if Joe Biden was president in 21 to 25, but from 21 to 23, why didn't they try to pass a resolution then? If a resolution was needed, why didn't they try to pass a resolution then?
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 21 to 23 period, ends all, solves all, and the War Powers Resolution coming to surface not only validates my work and me, but it validates the military, but it validates everything. Why didn't they try to pass resolution in 21 to 23? Because the only thing that directly directs to President Trump is 1550, and it's dated 2019. In 2019 before 2021, I'm pretty sure it is, right? So this is why this stuff, it's hilarious in one way, because you see all these people losing their minds. I'm talking about the people losing their minds that are mad and bitter. And you're like, why are you mad and bitter? Why are you so mad and bitter over something you don't even know about, right? And then all these influencers out there, especially in the mainstream world, oh, yeah, this is so funny. People have no idea. But the good thing about it is because they have no idea, it still is going to show you that President Trump and the generals and admirals are in control. They're controlling the narrative. And when they're ready for people to see the I call it the whammy, then that's going to answer all the other stuff between me and them, right? So but you know, it's I'm telling you, man, like, it's without knocking the people out there who are stressed and anxiety because they don't know, and the ones that don't have an idea to know or to look it up, but the people who have seen me, on the multiple podcasts, and there's a blueprint there, I'm like, you have no reason to look the way you look. Like, I mean, this whole thing is so. What's the word for it? I mean, outside of biblical, historical, like, is there like a eloquence? Not the word. Yeah. President Trump loves the word beautiful, but I mean, what is the word for it? Is it magnificent? I mean, what's the word for it?
Brilliant.
Well, it's amazing for us that are paying attention to be living through it, because we are watching it unfold. It is the greatest time to be alive in human history.
It really is. I mean, that's not knocking our ancestors or anything in the past, but like, there's nothing that compared to this strategy that is clearly defined. You can put your eyes on it if you read and study and comprehend it. There's nothing in comparison like this. I don't know. It's
well, that is my dream, to see the EBS come out.
Yeah.
But it says in the Q drops, you will love how this movie ends. And obviously we talk about people coming out and whipping masks off and all this stuff we're going to see. Do you think we're going to see JFK Jr. come back out?
Maybe. They got the new movie out of JFK and Carolyn, or JFK Jr. and Carolyn. A buddy of mine, he was a former.
That pilot in that movie sure does look like.
Yeah, there we go. And my buddy, I got a buddy. He's a former defense contractor. Very brilliant, very, very brilliant, especially in the financial aspect. But he was a key guy in a certain position for a little while there, and so he sent me this photo. He sent me that photo because he watched it. He beat me to the punch watching the movie, which is we banter like that, and he gets the exact image of the same image facing this way of JFK Jr. as the actor, the pilot. So it's a direct mimic, side by side. And he goes, JFK Jr. 2028. I'm like, LOL, but I was around at Trump International one day, which is the more private establishment, heavier, secluded, more private than Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is people would have to see the two entities to really grasp what they look like. But Trump International is a golf course, but it's way more private, even though it's a golf course, and more specifically oriented to golf. Most of the members that are females, they're there for the dining area, and they'll just dine, and then they leave. They'll do brunch or lunch or, afternoon dinner, then leave. But I was around someone specifically directly, related to JFK one day that no one would have ever dreamt was there. So, you see people at certain things. There's certain things I was told not to say, just because of certain, like other people even. Like a lot of members of Mar-a-Lago don't want to be known. That's why there's specific rules of when you can and can't take photos and where on the premises that you're allowed to by your guest. Like if you're the guest of someone, they tell you, hey, you're free to take a photo here. Da, 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 da. Guantanamo Bay is the same way. I've already gone through all that orientation. There's certain places where you can and can't take photos. So there's, some people don't understand that, even rules and procedures, but that's what keeps you in the game in a good way is when you follow the rules, right? So there's a lot of things like that. I took a photo one night. I have it, but I was allowed to take the photo, but I couldn't put it out yet. And they knew I wouldn't, but I took a photo of a very specific person sitting at the table with President Trump. And so, it's a massive chess piece, meaning like it's a massive chess piece in something that people saw operationally happening, but they would have never known the key figure of what people would deem like maybe bad, initially. This is bad. It's not a bad operation. They're taking it down. But the key piece sitting at the table behind the scenes with President Trump, right? Meaning that's the truce negotiation. That's the actual capitulation going on right there. And so, I was told, hey, just take it for history's sake, but don't put it out yet. We'll tell you when, and that's also part of how you like if there's someone out there like maybe in the audience, maybe you're a veteran and maybe you were in some form of special operations, maybe you're attached to it or whatever, like they all know this already, most of them do, but like you can get recruited externally, not just being active duty, to be in contractual positions in special operations or civil affairs or whatnot. But, that's part of passing your test as well. Like you got to show your loyalty and that you don't leak certain things. Hey, you can take this, but don't leak it. If you can take this, don't post it. Take this, but don't do it. It's a test or two. Like, let's see if he posts it. This particular person wouldn't be like a fallout. Like if I did do it, it wouldn't be like, oh God, he's sitting there with so-and-so. But that's a tester sometimes. They go, hey, look, can we trust this guy? Right. And that's what builds that loyalty. And President Trump is huge on loyalty. That's why, I think it was Adam Schiff that they used as the pawn where it may have been the other, but I think it was Schiff where President Trump said, can I have your loyalty? And he said, I can't give you loyalty. I can give you honesty. Honesty is a notch below loyalty, ladies and gentlemen. If you're loyal, you're still being honest, right? People don't realize that. If you're loyal, you're still being honest, right? Because if the guy up here that's running an operation, if his loyalty and his operation is transparent and you can read it, study it, comprehend it, and it all outlines honesty, transparency, then these people under the commander will also be replicating that. So why would he say I can't be loyal to you? Very key factor, right? So if people will learn what terms are in like an order and what term may, like loyalty will have a lot of things attached to it, So if people will learn that, that's what they're witnessing. And so I don't know where you see JFK Jr. exactly, it goes to personalities, right? It goes to personalities. I'm the kind of personality, if I was JFK Jr., it'd be more fun to sit back here with the joystick and being a part of it and go, hey, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, let's do, and then walk off to the sunset and people have to decide, was I truly alive or not, right? Because it still have what? Once people see fame at its greatest extent and all the kind of other things that comes with it, most of them don't want that anymore. They want the private life and being able to sit with their family and their friends and enjoy life. And then walk in a restaurant and go, dang, you look just like JFK Jr. And the person still not believe it, right? And it could be, it's more fun doing that than it would be actually revealing yourself again. And then it'll depend on, obviously, will he be able to walk down the streets again, if you wanted to? Will people appreciate the operational status, but then everybody living a happy, I call it hunky-dory life, where everybody's just so happy, but they're not idolizing people the wrong way. It'll depend, but President Trump's already alluded to that certain people are still with us. If people would just listen to him, that he's already alluded to a lot of people are still with us. So
100%. And he's also alluded to a lot of people that are not with us.
That's right.
Joe Schott.
That's true, yeah.
He's wearing the biggest mask I've ever seen, etc.
Well, that's so funny how people it's like if they knew military law and the strategies, tactics, they'd realize the why, but yeah, I mean, it's always like, oh, he didn't mean to post that. I'm like, the guy who revolutionized using Twitter for politics didn't realize he posted something down here that says Joe was shot in 2020. People, that's the people you want to get going, come on, people. This guy revolutionized using the whole, social media apps for politics, which is for the operation. But that's what you'd say to them. Like, they get to know that first and then say, it's operational, right? Twitter, now X, it's captured. It's all every one of these people who are hating on President Trump, they all have a blue check. So they're doing what? They're paying $7 a month to whom? Elon. Well, that's stupid. Like, why would you be funding a guy who is a part of Doge that's clean? So if people look at just that simple factor, I think they said there's 150,000 roughly blue checks. So you do 150,000 times, so you do $7 a month. Well, that's 74 million a year, I think it is, that's going to Elon. I mean, if this wasn't an operation and you're just a guy who bought an app and you're going, hey, to be an official, make people think you're authentic, $7 a month, $64 million a year to get hated on, hate me all the way. Right? Like, that's what Elon would be saying. Hate me all the way. Salute to you. Right. So if people would realize that and what just happened yesterday, it was an article came out, Palantir being adopted as the military system. Oh, man. So see, the people, a lot of Republican, I don't know if they're Republican, but a lot of patriots did what? Not a majority, but a lot of them jumped ship. I had the inbox full. Why are they doing this? They have our information. Did you not read the articles? This proves people don't read. The articles about Palantir, when it first popped out, first off, Palantir had been working with ICE from day one with President Trump. So they'd already been working with DHS and ICE with President Trump. But what did the people not read? It said what? That they took two databases and combined it into one. Which means what, ladies and gentlemen? They already had your information.
That's right.
Do you want President Trump to have your information, or you want Joe and Obama and whoever you think is the deep state? Do you want the deep state to have it again? They already had it. So see, if people would read two databases to one, they already had your data. They already have your numbers and information. So see, people, one little line in an article can sum up the whole article. And that's what people don't understand about skimming an article. Most articles are a bunch of hogwash with one or two key lines that you just got to find. That's the way law is. Law is a bunch of blah, 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 blah. And then a line or two that goes, there's the meat right there. That's what you got to find. And that whole article said two databases down to one.
Mm-hmm.
Because Trump said the other day, didn't he, as well? He said this, he was talking about all these sleeper cells being activated and stuff, but he said, we know where they all are.
Well, here's the other thing. Let me just say that there's a video you can go look at on YouTube. I'll have to try to find it if I can. It may be taken down. It was a guy's personal video, but this is military humor for people that don't know military humor. So these guys were on. Literally, this is a legit. The guy's got his little video, and it's these. It's so funny. It's just so military humor. These guys roll up in this beat up piece of trash like Toyota Corolla or something like that. And it is Afghanis. And one of our soldiers, probably Marine Corps, but I can't remember if it was Marine Corps or Army, but anyway, they're standing guard and he goes, hey, you check out fine, you're good to go. They had checked them out, checked everything. He said, oh, by the way, and he pointed up there, he said, can you go tell your buddies to come back and bring us some action? Like, go tell your bad buddies to come back and bring us some action because we want it. Like, can you do that? We're tired of standing out here. We're not getting any action. We're standing out here in the desert. And so he's giving these good Afghanis like, hey, can you tell your bad Afghanis to come back and give us, come on, we want to fight. Like, that is military humor is fine. So what I'm saying to people out there is that, look, any sleeper cells that still would exist right now, come on out. We're ready. Come on. We know where you are. We're not coming to get you, but come on out. Let's show the people. Come on out. You bark a lot. Come on out in the streets. Like, take that bark. Come on with it. Right? I dreamed last night. This is so funny. This is how God works, right? What we're talking about. Last night, I literally had a dream, and it was probably more closer this morning because I woke up and I looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, that was a dream. But I had a phone call come in my dream, and it was a hater. He's Derek Johnson, da, 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 da. And he goes, I said, and I'm an agitator when it comes to this. I said, you know what you sound like to me? You sound like a big old puss over there, right? So, and he goes, oh, I'm going to bring the biggest MMA guy. I said, oh, you got to bring a guy to whoop my ass. You can't do it yourself. Oh, gosh, I am shaking right now, right? Well, that's kind of the same thing with this, right? It is to say that if you believe, most Americans, if you went up to them and say, what do you believe about our military? You think we're the most lethal in the world? Majority of Americans will say yes. Right? We have the most badass elite military. Well, if you believe that, then you shouldn't be worried about a sleeper cell because we're sitting here saying, we don't have to go in and get you. Hey, bring that big old mouth out here in the street. And that's what President Trump said just a couple of days ago. And he said, what? He talked about Iran. What do? He said they put roadside bombs. They're cowards. They don't fight like men. They're cowards. They plant bombs and they walk away. They're sleeping somewhere already by the time the bomb goes off. Most of the time, a lot of innocent civilians got killed that way. It's not always military that gets killed by a roadside bomb, right? So come on out. We'll see what kind of men you are. Put your mouth where your mouth is, right? I use that all the time. Put your mouth where your mouth is. Come on out, right? So if people would realize that would be it. Look, I love my army. I'm not knocking my army. I love my army. It's almost blasphemous to say this, but I say this all the time. If you know a Marine Corps, right? Marine Corps say we're the Marine Corps and we're the only soldiers, right? Everybody else, it's just a uniform. That's their joke, right? Hoorah, right? The Marine Corps, the devil dogs. Look, I'll say this. All it would take is an eighth of the Marine Corps, an eighth of the Marine Corps in every city in America. Clean it up. in a half a day, probably not even that. In just a quarter of a day, the Marine Corps alone would wipe out every sleeper cell. Just an eighth of them. And you're not talking about our full strength military, right? So if people would appreciate and have gratitude to what they think they already support, then make that applicable. Go, wait, I do believe our military is the most elite badass in the world. Well, if you believe that, then you got to know on our own turf, we already kick butt everywhere else, but we'll kick butt on our own turf a lot quicker and a lot more lethal on our own turf because it's a lot more. Everybody's worth fighting for, humanity, if it's a true conflict that requires that. But our own home turf.
Yeah, bring it on.
Right.
Show yourselves.
Yeah. Derek,
and look, we haven't even got to veterans. We haven't even got to veterans, the former veterans, right? We're not even to the cowboys and the country boys.
And hunters.
We're talking about just active duty, right?
Yeah.
Hunters. We're just talking about active duty alone, or guard or reserve, whichever. Ladies and gentlemen, it's game over. It's already game over.
Yeah.
But that's one of those that would show like, okay, no, they.
So, I mean, do you think we are going to, the EBS would wake a lot of people up, but do you think in the run up to this going off, we are going to see some big scare event to sort of get these people who are still looking away nudged into place? We talk about financial banking collapse and other things. I mean, Trump even, or the White House, didn't they, governmental, set up two domain names the other day, alien.org and aliens.org. So I don't know if there's going to be some sort of disclosure there. But do you think we're going to see some sort of scare event, or do you think it's going to be a bit more of a peaceful transition as we move into this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more apt to lean to the peaceful. The one thing the military don't do is scare people on purpose. It's people can get scared, no doubt, because they don't know what they're looking to and at. But military's job is not to purposely scare people. We're in because then it would be a game at that point. I mean, it's not a game. This military operation is not a game. It's easy because the playing field was not that difficult. The difficult portion was the trafficking, but that started way back in 2017 with the first executive order of national mercy. All the trafficking and the rings were being busted up starting then. President Trump's the first president to establish a strategy for subterranean warfare. That was way back here, right? So that's the hardest portions, was getting in, following the money, seeing who it is, who it was, who's the gatekeepers, et cetera, knocking that out, which is still relatively easy because, again, we have a badass military. And we had already had what they call tunnel rats in the 70s. We just have there's so many men who are willing to do these roles and jobs already in the military special operations. And willing to do it, love to do it, especially with our today's technology. All of our gear that we have that can see in dark spaces and breathe in dark spaces, it's relatively easy operational as well. But it's just a long haul, a long term. You can't do it all in a day. It would take, making sure that we have replenishment, making sure people, our soldiers, their energy. They're getting fed and getting sleep, getting the proper rest as much as possible, but knocking it out still quick as possible. So all that started then. So, where we are right now, the only thing left really on the playing board would be Israel. But we've used Israel as a pawn. Every American that's whining about Israel, you got to, one, realize you're in a military operation. See, that's the key overlying factor always, because when you know that, then you'll see how Israel was used as a pawn as well, no matter what you feel about Israel. That's why I tell people, it don't matter if you're Christian or not, drop all that out of the way and go to, hey, did you realize that your taxpayer money has been funding Israel for many years, but specifically every bit of the F-35 program and all the things that Israel has militarily, you pay for it. Your tax dollar paid for it. So why not get your bang for your buck? Right. So you use Israel to go, hey, we funded you. So guess what you're going to do? You're going to take the hit as this as well. And what did they show everybody? Most of the 200 jets in these bombing operations in Iran were F-35s. Go read the statement of understanding. The memorandum of understanding is what they more specifically call it, MOU. You can Google these. It started in 1998. All right. The most recent one, it was signed in 2016, but it went into effect in 2018. It's a 10-year memorandum, ladies and gentlemen. So when's it end? 2028. So see, you don't rip the rug out on Israel. You go, no, we're invested in you. You're gonna do what you're told, or like we told Iran, do as you're told, or be the what? Recipient. FAFO. Yemen, do as you're told, or be the recipient. Venezuela, do as you're told, or be the recipient. All right. Well, China is not a place. You got all these people trying to chatter about China. There's an article right now today just said China's doing what? Opening their relations with U.S. on trade. That would be unless President Trump has a key piece that flips that bait and switch and goes, oh, we're not doing that. That we haven't ended the tariffs with China. So there's no beef there like that when you know what's going on economically. All right. Economics is what typically leads to a war in real war standards. All right. Because maybe you've been in a memorandum of understanding for 10 years and somewhere about year 5, you're going, forget it. But you don't have a legit sit down meeting. You just say, the heck with it. Then what happens? That's when retaliation happens. There's nowhere on the board that Ukraine and Russia, even if it would have been a real war in 2022, the war started in 2014. But if it would have been a real war, even in 22, what people think, see, they make people think it just started in 2022 and it didn't. But even if it had been a real war in 22 alone, that's not our problem. Russia's not our problem. Ukraine's not our problem. Ukraine is not a part of NATO. So what was quote unquote Joe doing quoting Article 5 of NATO? They're not a member of NATO. So what was America's interest at stake in Ukraine from Obama and Biden or the Congress? It was really the Congress because they're the ones writing all the laws. They're the ones writing and approving all these things. So that's why a president can't be blamed always, is because he can be overridden by the whom? Congress of their Congress, right? Because that's how they set it up. And that's if people would see that chessboard, it's like, well, that's why President Trump could use Obama. They could have used Obama as a chess piece as well, a good chess piece, not a bad one. So that's why all things are open in regular warfare and unconventional. So the EAS, it's called the Emergency Alert now, this old school EBS, but it could be used, but I think you use it positively, because that if you use it, it's never been used before at a presidential level, ever. So if you use it as a presidential level, that would be serious business, but you use it for good seriousness, because the end goal of all this is not to keep people fighting over things that don't matter, right? It goes back to priorities. President Trump said this just the other day in his press conference. He said specifically, there's only a few things that need to be federal to the U.S., military being one of them. The rest needs to be back down to the people, state level, which in the United States, the states representatives, the state senators are where people need to focus. Like, for example, Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, if you're in Texas, Chuck Schumer don't mean anything to you. He's not your representative, right? You need to focus on your state representatives, your state. Chuck Schumer, so that shows you the power. And that shows you the delusion of the overreach and abuse of Congress by when someone in Alabama or Florida or Mississippi is focused on Chuck Schumer, then you don't even know what's going on in your own state. Because if you knew what was going on in your own state, then you would realize that every people in each state, if everything is back to balance as it should be, then the people would have control of the representatives as it reads in our foundation. And you'd have control of your military as it reads in our foundation. And then you'd realize what is federal and what isn't. And once everybody comes to, that's why every person, that's why this stuff matters. These talks matter. That's why the military portion matters first. Is once everybody realizes your part, your responsibilities and your duties as an American especially, and you know what you're supposed to know in your state first. And if everybody in that state will pull their weight in the majority, and every state around the union will pull its weight everywhere, then we become that dominant mass majority again of people. But you got to be knowledgeable and educated on the what? Laws and the orders of what runs the federal portion. Because your state reps, you have state reps, but then you have what? You have U.S. congressmen in your state. So they represent your state and they're in your state, but then they go up to the federal level. But they're only there a couple of times a year. So see, that's what people don't realize is the process and the operations and functions. Now, getting to the EAS again. Why else would they be advertising on President Trump's rallies on the bottom? And they have these bid layers, not just a little bitty runny thing like y'all have down there. They have these big ones that would pop up in the bigger and go, get your emergency alert radio system. why would they be advertising an emergency alert radio system of all things? Like that's not. We live in today where people are like, I ain't seen a radio in years. What are you talking about? People don't. Your vehicles, every vehicle now, it has that system in it. You just don't realize it. But to the average person, they go, hey, the radio, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I got a CD player. I got Sirius XM and blah, blah, blah. Right? Same thing. So see, people, why would they be advertising an emergency alert radio? Ladies and gentlemen, that's like a movie, Pursuit of Happiness, with Will Smith, where he's selling this old clunk of junk, and he's having to walk around, and he's like, hey, buy your thing. It takes you back to the 14th century, right? What do you do? Well, you just plug it in right here, and people are going, oh, I got to have one of them. And they get it, and they're like, it don't plug in. Where's it? See, so people don't even realize. You got to use humor sometimes with this. So the emergency alert, why would they advertise a radio to people out there? Then what do they show you? Was it 2023? Somewhere back in there, said 50 senators received emergency satellite phones. Oh, there's only 100 senators, so why does 50 of them have emergency alert satellite radios? I wonder why, right? What else would you need a Zap Morris phone from Saved by the Bell? Like this big giant hello? Hold on. Which one I listen in? Which one I talk in? Right? So now, I use jokes to show people you got to use some humor with it, but why of all things? Emergency radio, emergency satellite phone. Now, what's happened is people have done what? Forgot about it, which is perfect, right? So you wouldn't scare people, but you'd use it in a way that could do what? You're sitting around, right? You're watching your game, and they're about to make a shot to win the game. Boop! Emergency alert. TV goes off the game, right? Stu, turn it back over. And then you're in a bar. You're in a bar with all your buddies. What are you doing, Alyssa? Turn it back. I'm not giving you a tip. I'm turning it. And every channel's the same.
Yeah.
See, so all of a sudden, when you're in a bar or a tavern or whatever you call them all around the world, it's different names, but if you're out in a place, most bars, you're not out there talking politics. You're out there digressing from the work week or whatever it is, right? You're out to have a time. You're with your family, your friends, or whoever, your significant other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're trying to just like there's sports on or fighting on, whatever. You're trying to not think of that, right? And you're in this bar, and then all of a sudden the TVs go, boom. Well, it wouldn't be a fighting point, right? Everybody be in the point of, what the hell? Every TV, our phones, your phone, my phone, everybody. That's what it would be if they decide to use that. So that would be a point of what? Everybody'd have to reach a point of going, what the hell's going on? I have no control. I can't turn it over. The only thing you can do is put your phone down, turn it face over, shut your computer, close the screen, turn the TV off. That's the only way to get out of it. But guess what? Your neighbor's going to be watching. Someone around you is going to be watching, so you can't get out of it, no matter how much you want to. And that would be perfect for unity from the standpoint of everybody's got to see it, everybody's got to listen, everybody's got to watch it, and then everybody's going to have to do what? Accept it, right? Because it will be all these faces. Like I tell the liberals, all your heroes are going away. You won't have any left because this whole thing is an operation. Everybody is tied in, right? The good guys that came together, and it's about that. So see, MAGA or Patriots, a lot of MAGA Patriots will still fight out there going, I like so-and-so. It ain't about who you like. You don't even know what you're supposed to like because you don't know the operational portion, the strategy, the tactics of the military side. And then like our military law in that book I just showed you, this book and different books like that, it teaches you about prevention. And we use like philosophers like Hugo Grotius, 1625. Said it's 1625, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this is years ago. Said you don't judge a man on his past. You judge him on his future. You prevent his sin. You don't judge the past. Hindsight's 20/20 always. So no wonder you're an expert when you're looking in the past. Everybody's an expert when you're looking in the past. We all have things we've done in our life. I wish I'd have never bought that vehicle. Oh, I should have never done that. I never should have. We all have hindsight, and it's perfect. But strategy, preventing the swamp from taking place again. That's when we find out who you are and what you're really made of. That's when your thinking skills, critical, analytical, strategic, convergent, divergent, creative, all the different kind of thinking skills comes into play. Then we find out what kind of person you really are. Are you a real patriot? Are you real MAGA? Are you a real warrior? That's when we find out your tenacity, your consistency, your loyalty, your honesty, your transparency. That's when we find out what kind of person you really are, is how good are you at preventing things from taking place, because you suck at it in the past. The swamp's a direct correlation that you suck at identifying who is someone who says all the right things to get elected, but you kept voting them in. So everybody's guilty at some capacity, not every single individual, but everybody as a whole, because there's no way to know where you really fighting in the past. There's ways to know, like with me, because I write things down and I've written it down. It's time-stamped and things like that. And other people who's written it or, has a video or whatever it is. But there's ways to find out. But most Americans are not in that, because most Americans are not influencers, podcasters, authors, etc. So most Americans are guilty to some capacity. You allowed the swamp, you kept voting it in, and you're sitting here demanding something, but you're demanding something because of a past visual, not a future. Like where every American needs to be is in a prevention. You need to learn this to prevent it, or it's going to grow right back. Think about how much population was from 2016 prior. We're now at 350 million population, and it's only going to get bigger, right, throughout time. So that means what? The swamp could grow back way quicker than what it did in the last 150 years, which means every person's got to do what? Critically think, strategically think, analytically think, etc. Be a part of the prevention. So if people would get into that and see that you can't judge the past. And even military law says you can't go back 50 years and hang somebody for something 50 years ago. Why didn't those people catch it? So there's certain things. Now, relevancy, yes, there's going to be certain things that's relevant that we did catch, obviously, and they're going to show that. They're going to show those justifications. They're going to show those justices. But there's certain things you just can't go back to, because why didn't you catch it? Why weren't you demanding back then? Why weren't you yelling just last year? No war with Yemen. It's the same airstrikes, same U.S. military, same branches, same aircraft. No one was yelling last year, no war with Yemen. We don't want to put our boots on the ground. We don't want to go to war. Just because Yemen ain't Iran has nothing to do with it. The principle is what? Bombing. The principle is airstrikes. The same thing. So see, so many people show Iran, they know Iran for what? The past. You don't know Yemen, though. You had no idea that Yemen's also in executive order with a national emergency by Obama. You had no idea. So see, there's principles that we're teaching Americans. So I don't think you scare the crap out of people. I think that you use the emergency alert in a good way, in a fun way, more fun, because it's going to be educational. It's going to be learning. It's going to be a shock factor. And you make people go, ain't nobody going to argue. And see, I personally think, this is just me being on the military thinking process. I don't think it's going to make people want to fight you. They're not going to be like, oh, you sorry sack. They're going to be like, what the hell am I watching? What is going on here? Why are all our phones? They're going to be more in a shock moment that they can't access anything else initially, that they would go, oh my God, my buddy was right, oh my God, my mama was right. Oh my God, my daddy was right. Because at this point, everybody somewhere knows somebody that's a quote unquote conspiracy theorist. Every person somewhere knows at least one person that they've seen on their Facebook or X or account going, this person, that's what happened. More of a shock and awe.
We have discussed before that the EAS could actually be the scare event that people need if they're all going to be there in shock. So yeah, good, bring it on. That's what I say. And just one little point to what you were saying before. That's why the General Flynn we see is constantly banging on about local action equals national impact, because it's to get everyone involved in their local communities, and see what these people have been doing to us. But yeah, that's been an amazing show today, Derek. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was great. We can't wait to see you in New York at the end of April.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's getting so close. I mean, it's even lawfully it couldn't go on like too long. That's why I try to keep telling people, like, you don't get fatigued at this point. That if anything, you should be so invigorated at this point that, you know, take a break maybe for a day, do whatever it is that you get in your zone. If it's hiking, fishing, just completely put your phone down, turn the phone off for a complete day or 2 or 3, whatever it is you need. But this is the time to, like, this is your real invigoration moment, because if you believe in President Trump, if you listen to him, then that moment of, he said July 4th would be one of the other key massive turning points, where we're not there yet. So hang on till that day. If you were going to ever jump ship, which you're not going to be able to, but if you're going to jump ship, you'd wait to like a massive day that anyone would say, hey, these 2 dates, this date, this date. Well, if you get to that second date, you hadn't seen anything or whatever it is, and you get 6 months after it, a year after it, 2 years, 3 years, and there's just like the same old, then you might have a reason to go, what the heck? But you're not even there yet. So just hang on, and you just got to trust. You got to trust the good guys, and you got to know the good guys and trust them.
Exactly. Hold the line, people. We'll get in there. Definitely. So where can people find you, Derek? It's Rattletrap 1776, isn't it, on most places?
Well, no, because I would have made more things more cohesive if I'd have thought, if I'd have known I was going to be flowing back in it to this capacity. But Linktree is the best place. My Linktree has all my correct links on it. Now, there's some fake Linktrees out there now because the frauds are getting real savvy. So you got to be careful, real keen more on spelling. So Linktree, LINKTR, period, that's where the period goes, EE, /, not a /, make sure you know what a / is, and then 1776 Nation. That's it, just 1776 Nation at the back after the /. And then when you go to that, it'll pull on your phone or laptop, it'll pull all my links up. If it's not on that Linktree, it is not mine. That's how you know what's fraudulent. I don't have a signal. People are getting contacted on I don't have a signal. I have one if I need it, but I don't use it. So I'm not on signal talking to people. I'm not talking about QFS. There's no such thing as quantum financial system. There is a quantum initiative. There's a quantum system. It will handle finances, but there's not a quantum financial system explicitly. People need to know that, but I don't talk about it, period. But, so there's certain things in a show, like if you know me, I talk nothing but military laws and orders of the military operation of the .gov.mil. All these others out there contacting you for QFS or something wallet. And this, I don't talk any of that anyways in my normal podcast. So if you see that, hear that, it's fake, ladies and gentlemen, it's not me. And then anything else. I'm not trying to be your boyfriend or a husband. There's a lot of women in love with me out there that literally we have been contacted that women have thought they've been talking to me for 6 months, and it's some fraud or a scammer who's ultimately trying to butter them for a monetary exchange somehow. So man, I mean it's full of all kinds of frauds and scams.
Yeah, keep them.
And I'm not laughing at the people, but gosh.
Yeah. No, keep them peeled out there, people, and use your discernment at all times. That is key. So,
thank you so much, Derek. Yeah. This was a great show. Yeah. So much information.
And we've had Ricardo Bosi on, so maybe in the future we can get both of you on together. I think that would be amazing because I know you do quite a few shows with him anyway. Yeah,
it's always an honor to be on with the Colonel. So he's someone that everybody should look up to and also study.
Definitely. Right, thank you, Derek. Thank you to everyone in the chat. We love you all, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, guys. Where we go all.
Make sure you're watching Stu's News and Patriots Across the Pond for some of your awakening information. Amazing guests every week from Monday to Saturday. Visit patriotsacrossthepond.com and follow Stewie and Elisa today on Rumble for the live shows. And remember, where we go one, we go all.
world flooded with noise, clarity has become rare. People are questioning what they're told and searching for something real. Mr. Heal's modern wellness meets old school remedies. CBD tinctures, methylene blue, gummies and edibles, THC-free wellness, and functional remedies crafted with old school care and modern precision. Biozox, a trusted source for ivermectin and fenbendazole. Biozox, believe your health decisions should be yours, not dictated by politicians or big pharma. Crafted with purpose and precision, Freedom Forged coffee, cacao and mushroom tinctures, small batch roasted coffee, rich cacao and functional mushrooms crafted with purpose. Verity Metals, redefining what precious metals investing should be. Why choose Verity Metals? We're not just another gold dealer. We're a trusted retirement partner. Our clients choose us because we lead with education, integrity, and transparency. Medical bills are the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States, accounting for 66.5% of bankruptcies. We can all agree the healthcare system is broken. There is an alternative: impact health sharing, which Yahoo News is calling the disruptor in the $4.6 trillion healthcare system. For more information, visit patriotsacrossthepond.com.